Chapter 26. Casterly Rock, the capital of the Westerlands, is a city built inside a rock. This massive rock castle stands by the sea, its base on the seaside having been hollowed out by seawater erosion, forming a huge cave. Whenever the tide comes in, the seawater rushes into this cave, producing a rumbling, thunderous sound. Above the cave is the Hall of Heroes of House Lannister. Only members of House Lannister and their close relatives who have performed extraordinary feats are eligible to be buried in the Hall of Heroes. The Hall of Heroes houses statues of 100 Lannister knights, lords, and kings clad in luxurious armor, who are the heroes forever guarding Casterly Rock. The Hall of Heroes is renowned throughout the Seven Kingdoms, and even across the narrow sea, people mention it. This seaside rock is 200 feet high, which is about 70 meters, equivalent to the height of a 23-story building in Earth's civilization. The rock is nearly 20 miles long from east to west and about 15 miles wide. Standing on flat ground and looking at the architecture of Casterly Rock, one can only see a tower and watchtower on the top of the rock, the rest being the outer shell of the rock itself. This rock has been inhabited by humans for thousands of years. Inside this massive rock lies a gold mine, discovered and mined thousands of years ago. Over the millennia, hundreds of mine shafts have penetrated deep into the base of the rock, hollowing out the interior. Although the red and yellow gold ore remaining in the rock still exists, it is no longer worth mining. House Casterly was the first family to convert the mine shafts into halls and rooms. After building the first fortress on top of the rock, they began to use the mine shafts that had been dug to the bottom to construct halls and other rooms. Legend has it that during the Age of Heroes, a highly legendary trickster known as Lon the Clever tricked House Casterly out of Casterly Rock using only his cunning. He was the ancestor of the Lannister bloodline, Lon Lannister. Generations later, Lon's descendants became so numerous that they filled Casterly Rock, which had not yet been developed with many mine shafts for construction. Therefore, some collateral descendants moved to a nearby village and settled beside a natural harbor. Thousands of years later, that place flourished due to trade and eventually developed into Lannisport, the third largest port city on the continent of Westeros. Today, this seaside rock has been completely hollowed out, and its interior has been built into a large city with winding roads at different levels. It is filled with corridors, dungeons, storerooms, barracks, halls, stables, staircases, courtyards, septs, balconies, and gardens. It has everything a city should have. At the base of the rock, 3 huge openings have been carved, known as the Lion's Mouths. The Lion's Mouths are the only roads in and out of Casterly Rock. The central Lion's Mouth is very wide, connecting to the Gold Road, the Coast Road, and the River Road that leads directly to the Riverlands. 20 horses can easily pass through the Lion's Mouth into Casterly Rock side by side. When there is sunlight, the shadow cast on the ground by the rock that carries Casterly Rock resembles a crouching lion, so Casterly Rock is also known as the Lion City, and the entrance to the city is named the Lion's Mouth. House Lannister therefore calls themselves Lions, and their family sigil and family motto come from this. Their family sigil is a golden roaring lion on a crimson field, and their family motto is Hear Me Roar. In addition, there is a widely circulated unofficial motto, A Lannister always pays his debts. Its popularity in Westeros exceeds the family motto. The current Lord of Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister, was born in 242 AC and is 56 years old this year. He is the Lord of Casterly Rock, Shield of Lannisport, and Warden of the West. When he was 50 years old, he began to lose his hair, so he simply shaved it all off, leaving only thick golden sideburns. Tywin's pale green eyes are also dotted with gold, which nobles believe is a symbol of gold. He likes crimson, so his armor is also made of crimson, and therefore the warriors' armor and cloaks throughout the Westerlands are crimson, and the Westerlands army is also known as the Red Cloaks. In the main castle of Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister is skinning a huge black bear, the result of a hunt he led with his guards in the eastern mountains. His knife skills are very skilled, and the skinned bear hide is complete and flawless. While Tywin was washing the blood from his hands in a golden copper basin, Maester Potter walked in. Lord Tywin, I have just received a letter and a gift from Maester Hallis. Maester Hallis is a novice that Maester Potter took in the Westerlands, a very young novice who is not yet 20 years old and has not yet passed the Citadel's official examination. Read. Duke Tywin is very majestic. He has never smiled since the day his wife died in childbirth. It has been 25 years. In 273 AC, Tyrion Lannister, known as the Imp, was born, but it also led to the death of Tywin's beloved wife, Joanna Lannister. Yes, My lord. After Maester Potter finished reading Maester Hallis's letter, he anxiously observed Duke Tywin's expression. The letter said that Alan Charlotte of Silverhall exchanged gold coins for Sir Adam Charlotte, sent 4 barrels of Arbor gold wine as a gift. Sir Gregor, out of caution towards the Charlotte family, had Alan Charlotte and his 4 guards drink first. As a result, Alan Charlotte and his 4 guards all died from poisoning. After Hallis's appraisal, the wine was mixed with the deadly poison the Strangler. Subsequently, 30 Charlotte mercenary cavalry ambushed in the woods outside Clegane's Keep launched a pincer attack on Clegane's Keep, and were all killed by Sir Gregor and his subordinates. 23 war horses, 11 sets of armour, and dozens of swords and battle axes were seized. Sir Gregor asked Duke Tywin what he should do now. Should he counterattack, or return all the war horses, armour and weapons to the Charlotte family? Sir Gregor believes that the poisoning and cavalry raid may not have been the idea of Alan Charlotte of Silverhall. None of the cavalry who raided Clegane's Keep were Charlotte family cavalry, so the accident was most likely the idea of Alan Charlotte, the captain of the guard of the deceased Alvar Charlotte. Alan Charlotte is not a member of the Silverhall Charlotte family, but a very distant branch of the Charlotte family. Duke Tywin washed his hands clean, and a servant hurried to hand him a snow-white towel. Duke Tywin wiped his hands carefully and said, "What is the gift?" "Salt." Tywin paused in his wiping motion, "Bring it to me." Salt is very precious to ordinary people, and some poor people cannot afford salt, but to Tywin Lannister, it is a very ordinary thing. How could Gregor bring it as a gift? There is something strange about this. I have already brought it. Maester Potter took out a beautifully packaged wooden box, opened it, and inside was parchment paper tied very carefully and exquisitely. The style of the bow should have come from a woman's hand. He untied the rope, opened the parchment paper, and inside was a square of bright silver silk. Untying the knot of the silk, both the maester and the duke's eyes lit up. The salt was as white as sand, as crystal clear as they had never seen before. Chapter 27. Fine, white salt slipped through Tywin's fingers. Very beautiful salt grains. Unlike the salt grains he was used to seeing and eating, ordinary salt grains were coarse, with a light yellow tint, and sometimes had a bitter taste. Tywin's fingers were coated with salt, fine as sand, white as snow. He touched his fingers to his lips, very salty, very delicious. A packet of fine white salt without the slightest hint of bitterness. Crystalline and translucent, unlike anything he had ever seen. Salt was very expensive for ordinary commoners, poor families ate very little salt, unable to afford it. The profit margin on salt was extremely high, but for the Westerlands, with its rich gold and silver mines, the profits from mining and producing salt naturally couldn't compare to those from gold and silver mines. The famous Gold Road, starting from the Lion Mouth in Casterly Rock and ending in the Seven Kingdoms capital, King's Landing, was specifically used to transport gold and silver ore to the city's mint. Every month's end, wagons and carts laden with gold and silver ore filled the entire road, stretching endlessly in both directions. The wagons and carts of the various Westerlands families were all on the Gold Road, hauling out ore and hauling back gold dragons and silver stags. "Send it to the kitchen, and tell the cook to use this snow salt for today's dishes." "Yes, my lord." Maester Polliver carefully wrapped the salt. There was a common saying among the people about salt: salt is as precious as gold. Precious not only in terms of price, but also in terms of scarcity, things are valued for their rarity. Maester Polliver carefully wrapped the snow-white salt and covered it with a brocade box. Where did the snow salt come from? As white as snow, Tywin casually gave the salt the name, snow salt. Maester Hallis said in his letter to me that Sir Gregor accidentally concocted it. Oh! Tywin said casually. Maester Polliver hurried out. He couldn't stand the bloody smell and the reek of animal hides and flesh in the room. Because of the long-term slaughter of wild beasts and livestock, the air in the butchery smelled strange and unpleasant, making Maester Polliver very uncomfortable every time he entered. "Maester Polliver," Tywin said. He carefully wiped his hands clean and then meticulously trimmed his nails. Duke Tywin was skilled at butchering wild beasts and livestock, and he enjoyed doing it. Even the best slaughterman among the servants couldn't match his skinning skills. "Send Gregor's 2 letters to Tygett Lannister in King's Landing." "Yes, my lord." "Tell Tygett that he should control his sons." "Yes, my lord." The capital of the Seven Kingdoms. King's Landing. The castle where the king resided. The Red Keep on Aegon's High Hill. The Red Keep was surrounded on 3 sides by cliffs that were impossible to climb, with only the north gate for entrance and exit. The Red Keep was named for the high walls built from red stone. On either side of the Red Keep's gate were the left and right barracks, responsible for guarding the castle. Next to the right barracks was a row of neat stone houses, where the royal courtiers lived. Next to the left barracks was also a row of neat stone houses, where the nobles from all over the 7 kingdoms who came to King's Landing to handle affairs temporarily resided. King Robert Baratheon decided to travel north to Winterfell to visit his brother in hand, Duke Eddard Stark, whom he hadn't seen in more than a decade, and to respectfully invite the stubborn Eddard Stark to take the position of his prime minister. Second only to the king and above all others, the hand of the king. Knowing Eddard Stark's indifference to fame and fortune, the king had no choice but to go and invite him personally. Eddard was a northern frozen stone that couldn't be summoned with just a raven. The king and Eddard had grown up together in the Vale of Arryn, their relationship surpassing that of blood brothers, and the late hand of the king, Jon Arryn, was both of their foster father. King Robert was a man who liked to show off and be particular about pomp and circumstance. In addition to the royal courtiers, the great lords from all over the land had also received his raven letters, ordering them to send nobles under their command to accompany him on his journey north. Except for Dorne in the southernmost part of the kingdom, thousands of miles away, the Iron Islands in the Sunset Sea, and the destination of this trip. The north in the northernmost part of the kingdom. The remaining subordinate nations, in order from south to north, were, the Reach, ruled by House Tyrell of Highgarden, the Stormlands, ruled by House Baratheon of Storm's End, the Crownlands, ruled by the king himself and the royal courtiers, the Westerlands, ruled by House Lannister of Casterly Rock, the Vale, ruled by House Arryn of the Eyrie, and the Riverlands, ruled by House Tully of Riverrun. All of them received the king's raven order. The king ordered them to send great nobles under their command to accompany him on his journey north. The more people, the more carriages, the grander the spectacle, and the more lively the scene, the more satisfied, happy, and delighted King Robert Baratheon would be. Tyget Charlotte was the one Tywin Lannister of Casterly Rock in the Westerlands had sent to deal with King Robert's order. King Robert Baratheon was Tywin Lannister's son-in-law. The Queen of the 7 Kingdoms, Cersei Lannister, was Duke Tywin's eldest daughter. Tyget Charlotte, representing the Westerlands nobles, uniquely obtained this opportunity to accompany the king north, which was a great honor for House Charlotte. Tyget Charlotte was very happy, and he felt an unparalleled sense of glory. Tomorrow, the mighty procession would leave King's Landing and head north to Winterfell. This was originally a very happy thing, but Tyget Charlotte was frowning and sitting on pins and needles. He had just received 2 letters. The letters were sent from Casterly Rock in the Westerlands. The 2 letters were not written to him by Duke Tywin, but by Sir Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, to Lord Tywin. Lord Tywin had forwarded Sir Gregor's 2 letters to Tyget. Tywin didn't write a letter to Tyget, but Grand Maester Polliver added a sentence in the blank space of Gregor's letter: Lord Tyget, Lord Tywin told me that he thinks you should control your sons. This sentence stung Tyget more than losing Alvar Charlotte. In Westeros, apart from the family heir, the other sons had no right to inherit or distribute any of the family's property. How much they could get depended on the mood and arrangements of the family head. All the family's wealth and territory belonged exclusively to the family heir. This was determined by the laws and traditions of the 7 kingdoms. However, laws and traditions still couldn't prevent disputes over interests between brothers. Some brothers killed their elder brothers and became heirs themselves. Some elder brothers chose to kill their younger brothers to consolidate their position as heirs. However, these extreme situations were rare. Of Tyget's 7 sons, only the eldest, Adam Charlotte, was very important to the family. The rest of the sons would have to make their own way in the future. This was why many sons of great nobles chose to become mercenaries, or even joined the Night's Watch on the Wall to avoid infighting over family interests. For example, Sir Waymar Royce, the youngest son of Jon Royce of Runestone, a great lord of the Vale. Who was Waymar Royce? He was the arrogant officer in the opening trio of the first episode of Game of Thrones. He insisted on investigating the wildling killings against the advice of his 2 subordinates and was the first young ranger to be killed by the White Walkers. In this world, the lives of sons who are not family heirs are not particularly important to the entire family in key events. Tyget came to King's Landing. His youngest son Alvar and his men robbed the Mountain's daughter and took her to the mines to rape her, and then the Mountain angrily came to his door to make trouble. None of these things were important. What was important was that House Charlotte's actions had offended Duke Tywin's authority. Gregor, that crude brute, knew to report the matter to Duke Tywin in 2 consecutive letters, but none of the 6 sons of House Charlotte reported the matter to Duke Tywin. They also didn't notify Lord Tijit, but directly planned a bloody resolution in private, which was a taboo for Duke Tywin. Moreover, the mountain was Tywin's dog, and House Charlotte's killing of the dog showed no respect to the master and didn't even bother to notify him, which was a very foolish decision. Chapter 28. Bang! Tijit punched the wall. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Lord Tywin had always valued House Serret, entrusting them with the important task of defending the Golden Road and granting them the mountainous lands of the Silver Hills, rich in mineral deposits. But what his sons had done this time, behind Tijit's back, was terrible, and their actions had greatly displeased Lord Tywin. Lord Tywin's authority was not to be challenged. From the bedroom inside the living room came the sound of Tijit's wife sobbing. The news of their youngest son Alva's death had deeply saddened her. This time, on the journey north, Tijit Serret had deliberately brought his wife along to foster closer ties with Queen Cersei Lannister, allowing her to chat and converse with the Queen during the 2-month journey. The journey was long and arduous, and Queen Cersei needed noble women companions to relieve her fatigue and loneliness. "Stop crying," Tijit snapped. "My son is dead, that damned mountain, that mountain who deserves to be torn to pieces." Tijit stormed to the bedroom door. "You find comfort in cursing here, but do you even realize the disaster looming? Have you not heard of the Rains of Castamere?" The Rains of Castamere, sung throughout the 7 kingdoms, instilled fear in all who heard it. The 2 most powerful families in the Westerlands were wiped out for offending the Lannisters. Their family lands remained desolate to this day, overgrown with weeds. His wife raised her tear-streaked face, her sobs abruptly ceasing. Her grief vanished, replaced by shock. "Is it that serious? Look at this letter. The letter doesn't contain any accusations against us from Lord Tywin." "No, it doesn't. Lord Tywin merely said to Maester Polliver that I should control my sons, and the next sentence was that if I didn't, he would. Do you not understand what it means for Lord Tywin to control my sons for me?" A gasp escaped his wife's throat, and she involuntarily covered her mouth. Her face was pale, and her body trembled slightly. But Sir Gregor also said that the poisoning and cavalry raid had nothing to do with Silverhall Serret, that it was all done by Alan Serret. "Do you believe that yourself?" Tijit sneered. "I believe it. I don't believe it, and Lord Tywin won't believe it either." "Why?" His wife realized that she couldn't control her slight trembling, and her body began to feel cold. "Alan Serret, a mine guard captain, how could he have obtained arbor gold to send to Sir Gregor without the permission of our House Serret? Without the support of Silverhall Serret, how could Alan have possessed such an expensive and secretive poison like the Strangler?" His wife was immediately silenced. "My only concern now is that Lord Tywin might think I was aware of it." "Then what should we do?" The tears on his wife's face had dried. She suddenly stood up. "You quickly write a letter back to Lord Tywin, and I'll go to Maegor's Holdfast to explain the situation to Queen Cersei. We knew nothing about what happened in the Westerlands. It wasn't ordered by you, and it wasn't ordered by me." His wife stammered, incoherent. She rushed out of the bedroom, then hurried back, opened the wardrobe, and rummaged through her clothes. "Tijit, which one do you think is more suitable for me to wear? White? Red? Pink or silk? No, 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 I need to put on makeup first. Oh, Kexia, where are you? Damn Kexia, I'm going to chop off your head. Hurry up and do my makeup, you damn idiot. Can't you be a little calmer?" Tijit snapped. "We were in King's Landing when the incident occurred. Lord Tywin must also be unsure whether I ordered the poisoning of Sir Gregor, so we must seize this opportunity to clarify and gain Sir Gregor's understanding." "No, why should we seek the understanding of that damned mountain? We just need to gain Lord Tywin's trust. You don't understand anything. Sit down and put on your makeup properly. I have to write letters to Lord Tywin, Sir Gregor and Adam Serret immediately. You hurry up and finish your makeup and go to Maegor's Holdfast to see Queen Cersei." Westlands, Clegane's Keep. Gregor stood on the high steps, looking at the 11 dark-skinned men. These men were all his subjects, summoned back by a decree of conscription. Once the conscription order was issued, the Serret mines had to settle accounts and release the men immediately. The lords of the various territories have absolute conscription rights over the inhabitants of their territories. 11 households, 11 minors, 1 household with 3 people, 2 households with 2 people, and the remaining 4 people belonging to 4 households, which meant that the men of 4 of the households had died in the mines. Tom Assman's son died in a mine collapse the day before he returned. These men were all the male strength in Gregor's territory. But they were not skilled warriors. In Gregor's eyes, miners who could truly be warriors needed to be trained. Skilled warriors who could fight were not miners, farmers, fishermen, or hunters. This time, Gregor summoned them back with the conscription order not only to have them put on armor and carry swords to fight, but also to have them mine gold. The current cavalryman and former old miner Tom Assman was responsible for leading this team of miners. After he finished his stuttering speech to the 11 miner brothers, the miners collectively looked at Tom Assman with silent eyes. They had many questions, but with the mountain present, and several notorious mountain followers who didn't blink an eye when killing, they would rather do wrong than say wrong. I can see that you all have something to say, speak up. Voice your questions, and I won't punish you. Whoever dares to stand up and speak first, I will reward him with a bag of salt, a good horse, a set of armor, and a good sword, Gregor said. His voice was unusually devoid of ferocity. The whole place was silent. The subjects also knew that the mountain had recently had a fierce fight with the Serret family and made a fortune. A bag of salt, a good horse, a set of armor, and a good sword, such generous rewards were something these men could not refuse but dared not believe. They could not earn so much in their entire lives. The price of a good sword was enough for them to mine in the mountains for 20 years. Notebook. Yes, Lord. If no one speaks after 3 more heartbeats, you will deal with them one by one. Yes, Lord, how do you want me to deal with them? Cut out their tongues. Since they don't like to speak, their tongues are superfluous. Yes, Lord. Notebook grinned. Sweetmouth Ralph, the executioner Dunson, and the brainwashed Polliver all revealed pleasant smiles. They all liked doing this kind of work, such as blinding people's eyes, cutting off people's tongues, and chopping off people's hands and feet. A very short silence was then broken by a stuttering voice, Lord Gregor, the place you arranged for us to mine does not belong to our territory. Chapter 29. But it doesn't belong to any other knight's territory either, Gregor replied. The place Gregor chose to mine gold was the closest area to Clegane Keep, in the Silver Hills region, a no-man's land. Gregor decided to get his first pot of gold nearby. As for the long-abandoned gold mine of Castamere, firstly, it was very far away, in the north of the Westerlands. Secondly, it was a landmark building deliberately left by Lord Tywin Lannister, the Warden of the West, to deter other nobles in the Westerlands and make them submit, so it was best not to touch it easily. Lord, there is no gold mine in the mountain area you ordered us to dig in, another miner said. I know, Gregor replied. Lord, why are we mining in a place where there is no gold mine, another miner said. Its back is the gold mine, Gregor replied, and it's very close. The miners exchanged glances. They understood that Lord Gregor intended to mine from the no-man's land into the gold mine area of House Swift. Lord, the place with gold mines on the back belongs to the territory of House Swift. Yes, Lord, what if House Swift discovers us? We will be caught and sent to the dungeons of Casterly Rock. Lord, who dares to violate Lord Tywin's laws? The miners began to chatter. The atmosphere finally picked up. Gregor raised his hand, and the audience immediately quieted down. If Lord Tywin wants to arrest you and send you to the dungeons of Casterly Rock, he will send me to arrest you with troops. Will I arrest myself? What do you think? Will I or won't I? These words were very rogue-like. But Gregor was the king of rogues. When had he ever reasoned? It seemed like never. His greatest advantage might be that he kept his word. Moreover, the Westerlands noble disputes, the arrest of criminals, the conquest of disobedient nobles, the knocking of troublesome knights, and the patrolling of the southern and eastern Westerlands border lines were indeed all done by Lord Gregor with the garrison of Casterly Rock. The miners looked at each other, unable to say anything more. Now, you are all my soldiers, although not the fighting soldiers I value, but my mining soldiers. From this moment on, you are my mine soldiers. Mine soldiers? It was the first time everyone had heard of such a troop type. It sounded so ridiculous, but no one found it funny. The first step to becoming my mine soldiers is to swear an oath. Maester Hallis, it's your turn. So, the young Maester Hallis brought out the statues of the 7 gods. The 7 gods carved out of wood, the father representing judgment, the mother representing motherly love and nurturing, the warrior representing battle, the maiden representing purity and innocence, the smith representing labor and handicrafts, the crone representing wisdom, and the stranger representing death. The 7 gods were only a few inches in size, incomparable to the colored statues taller than people in the September. Clegane Keep was too small and did not have a September for people to pray in. The 7 gods are actually 7 different forms of one god, representing 7 different virtues. Worshippers pray to a specific form of the 7 gods according to what they seek. The faith of the 7 is the official religious belief on the continent of Westeros. As soon as the miners saw the statues of the 7 gods, they immediately knelt down on one knee in unison. On the continent of Westeros, there are only 2 places where people do not widely believe in the 7 gods, one is the north, which believes in the old gods, and the other is the Iron Islands, which believes in the drowned god. The transmigrated college student was an atheist. After transmigrating, he believed that there were supernatural forces in this world. This power could be called God, or it could be called spirit. But no matter what it was called, gods and spirits would not respond to the prayers of small individuals, just like an elephant cannot notice a small ant in the grass. But people do not understand this. Using religious beliefs to rule a world with a low level of civilization is the most common method used by the ruling class. And the channels that connect small people with gods are the church and the citadel. Specifically, they are priests, priestesses, maesters, silent sisters, nuns, wizards, and so on. When Gregor saw the miners kneeling respectfully and praying sincerely when they saw the wooden statues of the 7 gods, he knew that he could actually use the faith of the 7 in handling many things. The oath of a knight and the contract between master and servant can both make good use of the worship of the 7 gods. After Maester Hallis led the 11 miners to complete their oath, everyone stood up and had no more objections to the task of mining gold. They had all sworn an oath to the 7 gods under the guidance of the maester. Gregor waved his hand, and the scribe shouted loudly, "Blackstone, come and sign." A big man ran out of the queue and stood in front of the scribe's table. Sweetmouth Raff sang like a song, "Blackstone soldier, receive 1 bag of salt, 1 war horse, 1 set of armor, and 1 good sword from Sir Gregor." Blackstone couldn't believe it. Urged by the scribe, he grabbed the quill dipped in water and drew a circle on the spot pointed by the scribe's finger. Most poor people cannot write or read. The better ones have names, and the worse ones don't even have names. For example, Blackstone, too lazy to give a name, the person is dark, tall, and has hard bones, so he is called Blackstone. The names of the 11 miners were already written on the scribe's notebook. They were the prototype of the first mine soldier team established by Gregor. The series of item names after these people's names would not be written by the scribe, but would be written in advance by Maester Hallis. Gregor beckoned Maester Hallis over and whispered in his ear, and Maester Hallis nodded repeatedly. "Blackstone, do you want the warhorse, armor, and sword to become your private property?" Maester Hallis asked. What? Yes, I really want to, Maester, I really want to." Blackstone felt like he was dreaming. He didn't quite understand what he was saying, his ears were buzzing. A warhorse, a set of armor, and a good sword with a scabbard. God! Even ordinary mercenaries don't have a decent set of armor. Kneel down and swear allegiance to Lord Gregor, and these things will be your private property. Private and Lord issued are 2 different things. The Lord has the right to take back the items issued by the Lord at any time. Blackstone knelt in front of the statues of the 7 gods, and under the guidance of Maester Hallis, in the name of his family and life, and with faith and loyalty to the 7 gods, he finished the oath of allegiance to Sir Gregor. Then, Blackstone received a bag of snow salt from Julie, a warhorse from horse soldier Tom Assman, and a set of armor and a long sword from Dunson. Half an hour later, Gregor had an additional mine soldier team, 11 war horses, 11 new soldiers, and 11 swords. Gregor said, "From now on, you are already the loyal and devoted warriors of Clegane Keep, my armed mine soldiers. Tomorrow morning, you will receive half an hour of swordsmanship training from Centurion Dunson and half an hour of horsemanship training from Knight Raff. For the rest of the time, I want each of you to find at least 5 miners to join the team. Go and tell your miner friends that the salary I pay them each month is 10 times their current salary. Today, each household will take 10 gold dragons home first." Chapter 30. 10 gold dragons, an absolute fortune for a miner. Gregor knew that most commoners in this world never used a gold dragon in their entire lives. It was always the case that those who built houses had no house to live in, and those who mined gold had no gold to spend. This was the same even in this agrarian civilization. 10 gold dragons, equivalent to 300 silver stags and 2,100 copper stars, were distributed to his subjects, and even Maester Hallis couldn't believe it was true. But it was true. Since leaving Casterly Rock and returning to Clegane's Keep, Lord Gregor had become very different from before, but Maester Hallis couldn't quite put his finger on what exactly had changed. Maester Hallis was Tywin's eyes on Sir Gregor, and now those eyes clearly indicated that he understood him less and less. Only the Starks of the North would be so generous and magnanimous to the common people. The Lannister family, whose wealth far exceeded that of the entire kingdom, would never do such a thing for the commoners. Duke Tywin would only punish and whip disobedient subjects, and for disobedient nobles, the song "The Rains of Castamere" would echo in their halls. Maester Hallis recalled Gregor's promise, made several days ago, to compensate each of his subjects with 1 gold dragon per year. At the time, Maester Hallis, Sweetmouth Raff, and the others thought it was a completely unfunny joke. It was not excessive for a lord to joke with his subjects, especially not the Mountain. Watching the 11 new miners ride out of Clegane's Keep on war horses, wearing armor, carrying swords, and with salt in their bags, Maester Hallis felt like he was dreaming. As an ordinary subject, there was no lord more generous than Gregor. Gregor was a nouveau riche who had just extorted a great noble, but he was inherently poor. Maester Hallis couldn't understand why he was giving so many gold dragons to his subjects. Nobles had never treated the people in their territories like this before. However, the Mountain could do anything he pleased, without needing a reason. Although Maester Hallis was similar to a strategist, he didn't dare to give the Mountain any advice. The Mountain could give 10 gold dragons to his subjects just like that, or he could kick Hallis to death if he didn't like him. That was the Mountain. The Mountain had always been synonymous with terror and brutality. Maester Hallis envied Sweetmouth Raff and the others who had been following the Mountain all along. How had they survived? And how were they living so well? Maester Hallis felt that their loyalty to the Mountain was unshakable. Everyone feared the Mountain and considered him a ferocious beast, but why did he have the absolute loyalty of these murderers? Maester Hallis was a wise young man, but his life experience was still shallow. The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. He was also experiencing the process of recording the Mountain's change from fear, terror, and hatred to submission, catering, gratitude, love, worship, and finally, brain-dead loyalty. To use a phenomenon from Earth's civilization as an analogy, it fit the condition of Stockholm Syndrome. Notepad. Gregor ordered, "Take out 40 gold dragons." So Notepad counted out another 40 gold dragons. "Give Tom Assman 10 gold dragons." Notepad counted 10 gold dragons to Tom Assman. Tom Assman took the gold dragons, his hands trembling. "Tom Assman, take the day off today and take the coins back home. This is compensation for your losses from planting poppies in the fields for the past 10 years. "Yes, my lord." Tom Assman's gratitude to Lord Gregor was particularly different. The little girl Julie was by his side. Maester Hallis watched as Tom Assman was about to kneel down to Gregor. The old soldier was very grateful to the Mountain, so grateful that he couldn't speak. He could only look at the Mountain, as if he were looking at the statue of the 7 gods, so devoutly. His face twitched slightly, as if he had a convulsion. Maester Hallis could see that if Gregor wanted Tom Assman to do anything in the future, the old man would do it without hesitation. Hallis's heart suddenly stirred. The Mountain's ability to subdue people's hearts was a bit terrifying. He had never noticed it before. He had to secretly write a letter to tell Duke Tywin. In the 7 kingdoms, the Maester was the only person who controlled the Lord's ravens. Gregor's family was shallow, and he did not raise ravens himself. The ravens at Clegane's Keep were brought by Maester Hallis from Casterly Rock. The ravens belonged to Duke Tywin, in order to facilitate the connection between Lord Gregor and Duke Tywin. "Take Julie back too. Who else is at home?" As a lord, Gregor knew very little about the situation of his 11 subjects. He had never cared about the life or death of his subjects before. "My mother is at home, and my older sisters were all married off early. They were all afraid of being raped by you. My 2 older brothers both died in the mines," the little girl Julie said, jumping and skipping. Gregor looked at this adopted daughter. Julie spoke of her dead brothers as if she were talking about dead kittens and puppies, without any sadness at all. Why didn't she show any of the grief or sadness that she should have? Was Julie naturally cold or lacking in humanity? Gregor didn't want to think too much about it. He knew that things like grilling souls were not easy to figure out. Although he felt a little Unnatural about Julie's indifference, he found that he liked the girl's straightforwardness and ruthlessness. It was obvious that the little girl had no feelings for her two brothers. They were a family, but there was no warmth between siblings, at least Gregor couldn't see it at all from Julie. "Julie, take the salt." "I'll allow you to take an extra bag of salt," Gregor said, "go back and see your mother. Starting tomorrow, I will fill your training sword with lead. Your arms are too thin and you don't have enough strength." "Yes, father." Julie ran up, opened her arms, and wanted to hug the mountain. But the mountain stared at her, looking like he would crush Julie's head in the next second, which made Maester Hallis's heart suddenly tighten. However, Julie climbed onto the mountain's arm as nimbly as a monkey climbing a large tree. In the shocked gazes of everyone, in the suffocating oppression of the entire scene, facing the mountain's glaring bull's eyes, she put her arms around the mountain's neck and kissed him on the face. Plop! Tom Assman was so frightened that he knelt on the ground, opened his mouth, and wanted to beg for Lord Mountain's forgiveness, but the old man's mouth opened, but he couldn't say a word. Fear blocked his throat. Julie jumped off the mountain, playfully winked her right eye at the mountain, and giggled. Everyone else couldn't believe their eyes, including the mountain himself. Maester Hallis closed his eyes tremblingly. In the next second, the mountain would definitely crush the little girl's head. The mountain was an absolute demon, not a good person. "Don't do that, this is the last time," the mountain said in a very stern tone. "Got it, father." The little girl's drawn-out voice showed that she didn't take Lord Gregor's warning to heart at all. Chapter 31. Due to the abundance of gold and silver mines in the Westerlands, a large number of carriages and ox carts passed through the Golden Road every month, transporting the gold and silver ore to the mint in King's Landing for smelting. To facilitate the smooth passage of carriages and ox carts through the mountainous terrain of the Westerlands onto the Golden Road, the roads in the Westerlands were the most and best maintained in the Seven Kingdoms. Besides the coast road leading to Highgarden, the Golden Road leading to King's Landing, and the river road leading to the Riverlands, the large and small roads crisscrossing the interior of the Westerlands were also very well maintained and wide. Even the small field paths could accommodate carriages and ox carts, and several cavalrymen could ride side by side without hindrance. Eirik was sowing seeds in the field. It hadn't been long since Sir Gregor had issued the order to cut down the poppies and plant rice, and her field had only recently been cleared. Eirik and her neighbors had drawn water from the irrigation canals, plowed the fields, leveled the rice paddies, bought new seeds, soaked them to sprout, and then sowed the sprouted seeds into the paddies. It was already a bit late for the first planting of the season. In the fields of other noble territories, the first season's seedlings had already sprouted ears of grain. However, because it was summer all year round with a suitable climate, rice could be grown and harvested at any time. In the northern north, March was a cold month, while in the southern Dorne, it was already a hot March. In the Riverlands and Westerlands, it was the best time, neither too cold nor too hot. Eirik, who was working with her head down, heard the sound of hooves coming from the field path. Although it was called a small path, it was actually a major road that could accommodate carriages and ox carts. Field paths that could accommodate carriages and were paved with smooth, wear-resistant cobblestones were unique to the Westerlands in the Seven Kingdoms. Eirik glanced up and continued working. Eirik judged that the person coming on the path was a knight of high status. She saw the warhorse, helmet, armor, and longsword. These were things that ordinary soldiers and mercenaries rarely possessed altogether. Many of these high-status knights were beasts. As long as they saw a pretty commoner woman in the fields, they would jump off their horses. Eirik's heart pounded. This was the mountain's territory, and she was the mountain's subject, but the surrounding nobles all knew that the mountain never protected his subjects and never cared about their lives, deaths, honor, or disgrace. Being raped by a passing knight was, in the eyes of the nobles, nothing more than a trivial matter for a single woman working in the fields. Eirik lowered her head and continued working, staying away from the roadside, hoping that the knight would pass by quickly. The knight stopped, no longer moving forward. The thing Eirik worried about happened, the sound of hooves stopped, no longer advancing. "Hey, woman, come here!" A rough voice shouted. It was the knight on horseback, shouting at Eirik. In the nearby fields, Eirik was the only one busy. Eirik's first reaction was to run away immediately, but she knew she couldn't outrun a horse. As soon as she ran away, the knight would quickly catch up. The field paths crisscrossed, and a warhorse could easily overtake her. Eirik's heart pounded wildly. She pretended not to hear and continued working. She hoped to wear down the knight's patience, praying that the knight would leave as soon as possible. What was protecting her now was this muddy field. The knight on horseback couldn't come down into the field to catch her, could he? But she was still worried that the knight would get angry or patiently wait for her on horseback. Although the Mountain had fought fiercely for Thomas Mann's little daughter Julie and the Chariot family, killing dozens of cavalrymen, this did not mean that the Mountain valued the protection of his territory's subjects. The Mountain was just doing what he wanted to do, and it had nothing to do with the responsibility of protecting his subjects. "Woman, do you want me to come down and grab you? If you come up here obediently, I won't kill you or harm your family," the knight on horseback said lazily. Eric's home was not far away. Because it was mealtime, her children had gone back to cook. An 11-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl. Standing in the field, she could see the smoke rising from the roof of her thatched hut. Clang, clang. The knight drew the small knife from his waist and tapped it on the armor on his arm. Eric felt the blood in her body run cold. She had difficulty breathing, and her limbs were weak. She felt herself raise her head, and she heard her voice speaking, "Knight, I am a subject of Lord Mountain." "I am not a knight," the knight on horseback said. "I am a soldier, a mine soldier." "Woman, you are very pretty. Come here, let's go to the bushes in front, and it will be over quickly. I won't hurt you or kill your family." "Not a knight." Eric immediately breathed a sigh of relief. An ordinary soldier, then this guy was just an ordinary commoner like her, so there was no need to be particularly afraid of him. "Soldier, leave here quickly. Haven't you heard of Lord Mountain's name?" Sir Alva Chariot, the 7th young master of the Chariot family, snatched the little girl Julie to the mine, and after Lord Mountain found out, he rushed to the mine and killed Sir Alva. "I am protected by Lord Mountain." The mountain mine soldier chuckled, "Woman, when has Lord Mountain ever protected his subjects? Don't make me wait any longer, or you will regret it." The knight pointed to the thatched hut in front. "That's your home, right? Someone is cooking. If you don't come up here, I'll go to your house and wait for you." Eric was afraid. Her 2 children were at home. "Soldier, swear in the name of the 7 gods that you will leave after you're done, not beat me, not go to my house, and especially not harm my children." "I swear in the name of the 7 gods." The knight on horseback raised his hand. "I swear not to beat you, not to go to your house, and not to harm your children." "Thank you, soldier." Eric felt her face getting hot. She reached out and touched it, and she realized she was crying. 2 streams of tears flowed down, completely unstoppable. "Come on up, Eric," the knight on horseback said, dismounting. Eric didn't understand why the knight knew her name. She found that her brain wasn't working well enough, she couldn't figure it out, her head was buzzing. She mechanically walked out of the rice paddies, put down the winnowing basket containing the seeds, washed the mud off her legs, and she heard her voice saying, "Soldier, then hurry up." She was worried that the children would come out and bump into them. The knight suddenly hugged her tightly and said, "Eric." His voice was strange, sounding a little familiar. "Not here," Eric said. "Go to the bushes. It's easy for people to bump into us on the road. Your armor is hurting me." The knight lifted his helmet with one hand, revealing a dark face. This was the face Eric had been dreaming of. Stone. Eric was stunned. Her husband suddenly returned wearing knight's armor and a longsword, looking majestic and awe-inspiring. "Eric, I'm sorry," Blackstone restored his original voice. "I just wanted to play a joke on you." Slap. A loud slap. Half of Blackstone's face immediately turned red. Blackstone chuckled, picked up Eric by the waist, and strode towards the bushes. Slap. An even louder slap. Chapter 32. The warhorse grazed nearby, occasionally glancing at the man and woman on the grass. Arya glanced in the direction of home, reluctant to stop if she wasn't worried about the children running out. Blackstone's face was beginning to swell on both sides, from Arya's slaps. Arya began to put on her dress. "You're the Mountain's cavalry now." Arya didn't use honorifics, directly calling Gregor by his infamous name, the Mountain. "Yes. Let's sell the armor and longsword and go south. I've sworn allegiance to Lord Mountain. He'll kill you when he's unhappy." "No, he won't. You trust the Mountain." "I swore an oath. We have a warhorse to ride, we'll take the coastal road, sell the Mountain's longsword and armor, and we'll have capital to open a small shop in the reach. The southern lands are more fertile than the westerlands. Arya tied up her dress and began to put on her clothes. The long sword and armor are my own, and the warhorse too, they're all ours, not Lord Mountain's, Blackstone said. Arya's hands paused, her eyes looking at Blackstone in confusion. The horse, the sword, the armor, the helmet, they're all our private property. A smile appeared on Blackstone's face. I swore allegiance to Lord Mountain, and these things were given to us by Lord Mountain, not issued by Lord Mountain. Arya's paused hands began to move, putting on her clothes faster. Then it's not illegal to sell the armor and longsword, sell them, let's go quickly. How much can we sell them for? I don't know, about 7 gold dragons. Adding the 1 gold dragon the mountain gave us last time, we'll have a lot of money. We can go south and find a noble to rely on, reclaiming wasteland is safer than staying here. Blackstone grabbed his underwear, shook it, and coins jingled. Arya's hand on her corset stopped again. Blackstone tossed the underwear at her. Arya caught it, feeling the weight. She reached in and pulled out several gleaming gold dragons, and there were more in the pocket. She took out all the gold dragons and counted them, 10. A large sum of money, enough for their family to live comfortably for many years. Where did all this money come from? Arya's voice changed. Lord Mountain compensated us for the losses from growing poppies before. Arya froze, staring blankly into Blackstone's eyes. He really compensated us with money. Her voice felt ethereal, unreal. It was like a dream. Lord Mountain compensated all 11 households with 10 gold dragons each. Blackstone walked over, picked up his clothes, and began to dress quickly. I am now a mine guard under Lord Mountain. And salt, snow-white fine salt, I've tasted it, you can eat it directly with rice, it has a very delicious taste, not bitter at all, and no grit. Salt was a rare commodity for Arya. Where's the salt? Arya asked. As she asked where's the salt, Arya had already started rummaging through Blackstone's bag. Brown craft paper wrapped several pounds of white salt, making Arya's eyes light up. No matter how rich the nobles of the Westerlands were, rich enough to rival kingdoms, most of the commoners in the Westerlands were still poor. Arya had seen salt sold in the large city of Lannisport, yellowish salt with a bitter taste, often containing grains of sand. This salt, as white as snow and as fine as sand, was the first Arya had ever seen. She touched a little salt with her finger and put it in her mouth. Her brow furrowed, her face twisting slightly, so salty and delicious. The mountain gave us this salt. Arya used honorifics when referring to the mountain, adding the word Lord. Yes. Where did this salt come from? Arya had never seen such exquisite salt. According to the scribe and the maester, Lord Mountain bought the salt and then refined it using secret methods. Only the people of Clegane's Hold have this salt. Is Lord Mountain going to sell salt back at Clegane's Hold? This salt is not sold to outsiders. Lord Mountain only sent this salt to Duke Tywin, and then to the people of Clegane. Lord Mountain promised that we can eat this fine salt for free from now on. Maester Harry said that his teacher, Archmaester Potter, wrote to him, telling him that Duke Tywin had given this salt a special name, snow salt. Lord Mountain is giving us snow salt to eat for free. Arya couldn't believe it. Yes. Lord Mountain not only gives us snow salt to eat, but also swore an oath in front of the statues of the 7 gods to protect us. From now on, if anyone from other territories bullies us, Lord Mountain will come forward to seek justice for us. Just like Tom Assman's little daughter, Julie, even though the other party is a Charlton noble, little Julie cannot be violated. How could such a good lord be the infamous Mountain? Arya herself had always been worried, afraid that one day the lord would suddenly break into her house with a gang of vicious guys and rape her. Her little daughter was 4 years old, and she raised her with constant worry, always uneasy. We all know about little Julie's matter. People in the nearby territories are saying that little Julie is also named Clegane, but has not sworn an oath in the September under the auspices of the Maester. Little Julie will soon swear to be named Clegane. Really? Really? Maester Harry is responsible for inviting craftsmen from Lannisport to build a September in Clegane's Hold. In the future, we will have a place to pray for harvest, pray for health, pray for the growth of our children, and pray for victory in battle. We no longer have to go to other lords' septs. That's great, Arya said excitedly. There's even better news. What news? Outside his castle, Lord Mountain is not only building a September, but also a Clegane village. When the houses are built, all 11 of our households will move into Clegane village to live. We don't have to pay gold dragons for the houses, Lord Mountain is paying for the construction. Wells, livestock pens, chicken coops, stables, underground storage rooms, firewood sheds, walls, all will be built. Our stone houses will be more than twice the size of our current thatched houses. Arya looked at her husband, her mouth wide open in surprise. Arya, do you still want to escape to the south? Blackstone put on his clothes and pants, put the armor on the horse's back, and hung the long sword on the saddle. Lord Mountain, will he still rape women? Lord Mountain swore an oath with us in front of the statues of the 7 gods that he will only protect the people of Clegane's hold from now on, regardless of men, women, old, or young. Any commoner or noble from other territories who bullies us will only have one painful feeling, and that is regret. Just like the Charlton family. Yes, just like the Charlton family. Chapter 33. On the road outside Clegane Keep, a troop of riders advanced at a steady pace. In the middle of the formation, a large banner was raised, depicting a lifelike peacock with its tail feathers fanned out. Among the troop were several prison carriages, holding over a dozen people, old and young, men and women. Adu Sherritt led his guards at the front. To the left, right, and rear of the prison carriages were Sherritt family's most elite cavalry. This cavalry force numbered 50. With a sharp, metallic whistle, shouts, hoofbeats, and the clashing of swords echoed from within Clegane Keep. Soon, a cavalry unit, lances at the ready, assembled, lined up, and charged out from the keep. Leading the charge was the sweet-mouthed Rafford Clegane. His breastplate was newly engraved with the Clegane family's sigil, 3 hounds attacking with roaring maws. Only those who bore the Clegane name were entitled to display the Clegane family sigil, to wear the Clegane family sigil pin on their attire. A banner with 3 black hounds in a vertical line on a yellow background accompanied the cavalry. This cavalry force wore scarlet cloaks, the traditional color of the Westerlands army, matching the color of the Sherritt family cavalry's cloaks. The Clegane Keep's 3-headed hound banner was held by a strong, dark-skinned rider named Blackstone, a former mine worker. At the forefront of the charge were Gregor's 4 greats, the knight Rafford Clegane, the executioner Dunson, the fanatical Polliver, and the scribe, Mark. The 4 men surrounded a petite figure, Julie Clegane. Julie wore light, fitted armor, with leather protection at the elbows and knees to ensure flexibility. A sword belt hung at her waist, holding a sword and a dagger, and a bow was slung across her back, with a quiver full of arrows at her hip. The people of Clegane Keep were able to react so quickly because they were in the courtyard of Clegane Keep undergoing cavalry training. Every rider in this cavalry carried a bow and a quiver. Julie's primary weapon is the bow. This was Lord Gregor's order. No discussion, just an order. Lord Gregor believed that Julie was small in stature, with smaller arm bones, and naturally lacked the strength of a man. Close combat would put her at a disadvantage, so he ordered Julie Clegane to focus on archery. However, whether practicing with spears, swords, or bows, strength was essential. Drawing a longbow with stiff arrows required no less strength than wielding swords. Julie's practice sword was filled with lead to help her develop arm strength. Gregor's 4 greats surrounded Julie because she was Lord Gregor's adopted daughter. Lord Gregor had married 2 wives, both of whom unfortunately died from broken necks, leaving him without children. Thus, his adopted daughter, Julie Clegane, became the influential only daughter of the Clegane family. Even the 4 merciless devils under Gregor's command dared not bully her. Adu Sherritt reined in his horse. His troop halted with him. Adu was surprised to see a cavalry force charging out of Clegane Keep, estimating that it numbered over 50 riders. The cavalry roared forward, the wind snapping the 3-headed hound banner. Where did Gregor get cavalry in just 20 days? Adu asked. Beside him was the most level-headed of the 7 brothers, the 4th, Adam Sherritt. Adam was skilled with the lance. Is it Lord Tywin's Guard cavalry? Sir Gregor was the captain of Lord Tywin's Guard, commanding an elite cavalry force of 500 men, responsible for Tywin's safety. However, in peacetime, Tywin did not need a 500-man cavalry force guarding him every day. It's likely, Adu Sherritt said. The approaching cavalry was fully armed, with armor, helmets, swords, and steeds, as well as round shields on their backs. A cavalry force with such fine equipment was most likely Tywin's Guard cavalry. It's not. Adam stared intently at the rapidly approaching force. Their banner is the three-headed hound. If it were Tywin's cavalry, they would bear the Golden Lion banner. It's Sir Gregor's personal cavalry. Adu's voice revealed his shock. They all knew Gregor was a pauper, living off Tywin's generosity. Usually, his Clegane keep had only 3 people, a cook, a servant, and a young steward. His lands were inhabited by only 11 households, making him a minor noble with the smallest territory and fewest subjects. The mountain used the gold dragons we paid him to buy a cavalry, Adam said, sounding frustrated. Perhaps he hired mercenaries, Adu thought sourly. It wouldn't be mercenaries. The mountain's reputation, his dual roles as Tywin's general and guard captain, and his small territory mean he doesn't need mercenaries to protect his small domain. But he also doesn't need his own private cavalry to protect his territory. Who would dare attack his land? Adu retorted to his 4th brother. Hooves thundered as the Clegane cavalry arrived. Adu noticed the 3-headed hound sigil on Raffert's armor and the petite figure in the center. Julie Clegane was fully armored, wearing a helmet, so no one could see her face. But Adu and Adam both guessed who the petite figure was. Raffert emitted a sharp whistle, and the troop swiftly split apart, each man raising his lance, surrounding the Sherrod troop. Adu was surprised by the sound coming from Raffert's mouth, which he had never heard before. Adam and his soldiers had never heard a metallic whistle either. In this world, during battle, generals and centurions shouted their orders. Noble children were specially trained to shout loudly from a young age because they would lead troops into battle. Ironworking was advanced in this world, but the iron whistle had not been invented. Gregor, from another civilization, effortlessly invented the iron whistle and, in 2 days, integrated various battle commands into the whistle's varied tones, using it to train the cavalry's movements. The iron whistle's penetration and clarity were far superior to shouting, especially in the chaos of a large-scale battle. Adu and Adam also noticed that these riders carried 2 javelins each, in addition to swords and lances. This was a comprehensively trained cavalry, with bows on their backs and quivers at their waists. Arrows for long-range attacks, javelins for mid-range throws. The Sherrod cavalry, surrounded, was immediately like fish on a chopping board. The petite figure in the center removed her helmet, revealing a heroic and cold face. Her monolid eyes and thin lips exuded chilliness and ruthlessness, a stark contrast to her demeanor in the mines, but it was indeed Julie Clegane. Chapter 34. Julie wasn't wearing her red cloak. The red cloak would increase her burden. This was also the rule of her father, Gregor. Without the red cloak, whether riding or sword fighting, she was indeed more efficient. Without the red cloak, she also felt faster on horseback. In 20 days, Gregor had taught Julie to discard all fetters and focus only on the real goal. Julie's armor was copper-colored. It was modified from adult armor. Adam Sharp could hardly recognize Julie. He had only seen Julie once on the Golden Way outside the Silver Hall. At that time, Julie was sallow and emaciated, her hair dry and split, and other than her calm and indifferent eyes, she was unremarkable, like a beggar. Almost a month had passed, and Julie had undergone a complete transformation, as if she were a different person. Sir Adair, what brings you to my Clegane keep? Julie Clegane's voice was clear, but without warmth. Her eyes were sharp, cold, and ruthless. Lady Julie, I have come to see Sir Clegane. Adair waved his hand backward, gesturing towards several prison carts. These prisoners are the family of the murderer, Alan Sharp. Alan Sharp conspired to poison Sir Clegane and ambushed mercenaries to strangle Sir Clegane's subjects, committing a great crime. Although Alan is dead, his death cannot offset his great crime. We have captured all of Alan Sharp's family and brought them here specifically to be dealt with by Sir Clegane. Julie sneered, Sir Adair, we Cleganes all know in our hearts who the real murderer is. She stared into Adair's eyes, causing an inexplicable chill to rise in Adair's heart. Anyone who offends the Cleganes will suffer merciless retribution. The stranger will one day bring down divine punishment. I, Julie Clegane, firmly believe this. Yes, Lady Julie, I completely agree with what you said. Now that the criminals have been captured and sent here, Lady Julie, can we meet Sir Clegane? Leave the prison carts, and get out. Little Julie was as cold as ice. The Sharp family's actions filled her with extreme hatred. Alan Sharp sought revenge for his lord, but before his bones were cold, his family had already been betrayed by the Sharp family. Are these people's hearts made of the hard ice of the north? Or are they made of the teeth of sharks in the Sunset Sea? Such cruel and merciless behavior, in their eyes, seemed to be a matter of course. Adair wanted to say something, but Sweetmouth Rafford smiled and said, "Sir Adair, my lady told you to get out, so get out quickly." Sweetmouth Rafford said the word get out with a smile, as humble and polite as if he were saying please. "Get out!" Polliver roared. "Get out!" The Clegane cavalry roared in unison. Most of these cavalrymen were freemen miners who had been training at Clegane Keep for a short time, but sheep trained with lions would quickly become biting lions. A fierce aura instantly permeated the air. Adair and Adam were both famous knights in the Westerlands, with powerful family forces and high martial skills. They were respected in status and position, but they were shouted at to get out by Clegane's recruits. This humiliation caused their faces to turn as cold and hard as the black stone of the Silver Hill. "Lady Julie, we have come to meet Sir Clegane to hand over the criminals and apologize to Sir Clegane." "Please, Lady Julie, clear the way," Adair said coldly. Julie remained silent, drew her short sword, took the small round shield from her back, and with a clang, struck the round shield with her short sword. "Clegane soldiers, I will strike 3 times. If the sharps don't get out, take them down. If there is resistance, kill." "Ho!" the Clegane cavalry shouted in unison. The faces of the Adair, Adam and the 50 cavalrymen changed. Clang clang clang! Sweetmouth Rafford, the hangman Dunson, the fanatical Polliver, and the note-taking Mark all drew their long swords and took down their round shields. The Clegane cavalrymen took down their round shields, right hand with a long spear and left hand with a round shield, ready for battle. Clang! Julie struck the shield with her short sword. Boom! The Clegane cavalrymen struck their round shields with their long spears, striking the shields to strengthen their military might and intimidate the enemy. A total of 60 cavalrymen, 4 cavalry officers. Their weapons struck the round shields at the same time, making a deafening noise. Clang! Julie struck the second time. Boom! The cavalry followed with the second strike. The war horses of the sharp cavalry, surrounded on all sides, snorted, their hooves tapping uneasily on the ground, and the formation deformed. But Sir Adair Sharp did not draw his sword. The well-trained Sharp family cavalrymen, although frightened, did not dare to draw their swords. After Julie struck the second time, she put on her helmet and slowly lowered her visor. This was a signal that battle was imminent. Including the knight Rafford, all the cavalrymen put down their visors, ready for battle. Menacing gazes stared at the sharp formation from the narrow slits in the visors, long spears thrust forward, pointing at the bodies of these cavalrymen. Julie raised her short sword, and as soon as she struck the third time, the battle would erupt violently. The sharp cavalry, surrounded on all sides by long spears, were at a complete disadvantage, and because Sir Adair Sharp had not drawn his sword, no one dared to draw their swords. "Let's go!" Adair's back was soaked with cold sweat. He raised his hand and gave the order. So, the Clegane cavalry surrounding the Sharps made way. Adam breathed a sigh of relief. Several long spears had been pointed at his chest, and as soon as Julie struck, he would be pierced through the body by several spears at the same time. As Adair and Adam led 50 family cavalrymen away in disgrace, behind them, the Clegane cavalrymen played the round shield song of farewell for them. Boom! 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 3 carts carrying members of the Allen Sharp family were driven into Clegane Keep. The doors of the prison carts opened, and the people inside were too frightened to get out. The terrifying Mountain stood in the courtyard, practicing swordsmanship with a great sword. His massive body was like a beast from ancient times, except that it had a human form. His long sword was the length of a spear, but in his hands, it was as nimble as a small knife and fork. In the flashing cold light, Clegane's sword moved faster and faster, as agile as a cat and as light as the wind, and his giant feet stomped shallow pits in the ground. More than a dozen members of Allen's family were dragged out of the prison carts by the cavalrymen. They prostrated on the ground, trembling all over, and no one dared to look up at the Mountain. The Mountain's ferocity and cruelty filled everyone with fear. The Mountain continued to practice his swordsmanship and said, "Maester Hallis, take them down for a bath and change them into clean clothes. Then take them to the September for prayer and swear allegiance to Clegane Keep, and I will not kill them." These prisoners looked like they had been severely tortured, their clothes were ragged, and some had whip marks on their faces. "Yes, my lord. But the September has not yet been completed. Having the statues of the 7 gods is enough." "Yes, my lord. Knight Rafford. Here, my lord. Incorporate the young sharp men into the cavalry and train them as miners. Yes, my lord. Chapter 35. Night. Clegane Keep. Dining Hall. Gregor put down his chopsticks and gave a small, satisfied burp. Chopsticks. This world didn't have chopsticks. Nobles used gilded silver knives, forks, and spoons. In remote and backward places, poor people directly grabbed handfuls of rice to eat. Gregor had whittled himself a pair of chopsticks for personal use. In the dining hall with dozens of people, the clinking of cups, plates, knives, and forks created a cacophony, and Gregor was the only one using chopsticks in addition to his knife and fork. Gregor, Sweetmouth Ralph, Dunson, Polliver, Notebook, Julie, Thomas Mann, Maester Hallis, and a middle-aged woman sat at one table. 60 cavalrymen sat at the long tables next to them. Outside the dining hall, the craftsmen building the September and the servants sat at another table. In the past 20 days, many changes had taken place at Clegane Keep. The first was the recruitment of mine soldiers. Mine soldiers were Clegane's cavalry. But Gregor insisted on calling this troop mine soldiers because these people were cavalrymen when they rode horses, and they had to mine when they dismounted. Apart from the 11 mine soldiers who were his subjects, the remaining 49 mine soldiers came from freemen in Lannisport and miners from the Silver Hills mountain mines. Currently, Gregor hadn't sent these 60 mine soldiers to mine, but was training their combat skills. Clegane's mine soldiers were soldiers on horseback and civilians on foot. After establishing this mine soldier troop, Gregor also lured, coaxed, and coerced hundreds of freeman laborers from Lannisport. This group was divided into 2 batches, one went to the nearby Silver Hills to quarry stone, log timber, and burn tiles, preparing building materials for the construction of Clegane's village. The other group of master builders was building the September to the west of Clegane Keep. The September was connected through a large gate opened in the walls of Clegane Keep. The September was built neither too big nor too small, of medium scale, completely incomparable to the Seps in Casterly Rock and Lannisport, but it was a complete September structure. In a few more days, the September would have its ridge beam installed and the roof covered. The faith of the 7 was a good thing, able to give hope to those without hope, to give those without friends to confide in a place to pour out their hearts, and also to give courage to those without courage, and loyalty to those without loyalty. Having subjects and warriors swear allegiance before the 7 gods was a method Gregor liked very much. Whether in Earth's civilization or in this magical world, rituals were very important, and the underlying principles were the same. Wedding banquets, graduation parties, and official issuance of certificates in Earth's civilization were all forms of ritual. People's spiritual world needed this. The September of the 7 was a place for people to conduct spiritual rituals. After the September was built, the work of the laborers who collected stone, felled trees, and fired roof tiles in the mountains would be almost finished. Gregor didn't send anyone to supervise the workers in the mountains. First, he gave the workers generous wages. Second, he had the workers swear before the statues of the 7 gods to work hard before they went to work in the mountains. Third, he set a deadline for the foreman. If the task of collecting building materials wasn't completed within the specified time, he would cut off the foreman's hands and feet. If the foreman dared to run away with the workers, he would hunt them down and kill their families. The 1,000 gold dragons Gregor obtained from the Chariot family was his first pot of gold. Building a spacious and tidy Clegane village for 11 families to live in a September of moderate size would cost more than 200 gold dragons. Raising a troop of 60 mine soldiers, which would expand, purchasing top-quality armor, long swords, javelins, spears, shields, bows and arrows, war horses, short knives, steel spikes, daggers, and many other things for these people in Lannisport. Gregor paid 600 gold dragons in one go. The weapons, armor, and war horses he bought were the best on the market. In his gold coin box now, there were only a pitiful 20 or so gold dragons left. A mine soldier's monthly salary was 1 gold dragon. This salary was very high for ordinary soldiers, 3 times the pay of other ordinary soldiers. In a month, Gregor would have to pay at least 60 gold dragons in wages to his soldiers. And the soldiers' usual food, clothing, shelter, and transportation all cost money. In just 20 days, establishing a small mine soldier troop, building an ordinary September, and mining some building materials, Gregor felt the pressure increasing day by day. Gregor now deeply understood the proverb, "You don't know the price of oil and rice until you are in charge of the household." 1,000 gold dragons were like a pebble thrown into a pond, quickly disappearing without a trace after creating a few ripples. Once the stonemasons finished quarrying the stone pit designated by Gregor and transported the stone blocks, Gregor would lead his mine soldiers to start from the stone pit and dig diagonally into the Chariot family's gold mine, extracting gold belonging to the Chariot family. Most of the silver hills belonged to the Silverhall Chariot family, which was just too damn enviable. There were still 10 days until the first month's wages were to be paid, but Gregor didn't have that much money. He was temporarily unable to pay the wages. But there were still 10 days. For a super rogue, if there was no road ahead of the mountain, then climb directly over it. First, he had to settle the family of Alan Chariot, who was sent over by Adam Chariot today. Alan Chariot's woman was sitting at the same table as Gregor and the others. Alan Chariot was a knight. His wife was qualified to sit with Gregor and the others. And his 7-year-old son sat with his grandparents at the craftsman's table outside. Lady Alan, do you know how your husband Alan Chariot died? Gregor said. Everyone at the table stared at the knight's wife. The woman opposite him lowered her head and said nothing. The strangler your husband used to poison me, the poison mixed in the golden wine, was more expensive than gold, diamonds, emeralds, and agates. Only the chariots of Silverhall could afford it. Your husband couldn't afford it. The woman slowly raised her head, a very young woman with decent looks. Her large eyes were filled with tears. Your husband's plan to poison me failed. The chariots of Silverhall, in order to shirk responsibility and give an explanation to Lord Tywin of Casterly Rock, arrested your entire family and sent you here to atone for your sins. Lady, are you afraid of death? The woman shook her head very firmly. What about your son? Tears immediately flowed from the woman's eyes, revealing despair in her gaze. Lord, spare my son. I am willing to do anything for you. I can taste poison for you, wash you, make your bed, clean the room. I am willing to be your personal servant, the woman said, tears flowing silently. She tried hard to control her emotions, but her body was still trembling slightly. The mountain's reputation for raping and killing women was well known, enough to stop children from crying at night. All right, I won't kill your young son. I will take in your whole family, restore your status as freeman, and welcome your whole family to become members of Clegane's village. Thank you, Lord. The woman got up, knelt down, and kowtowed, making loud thumping sounds. After only 3 kowtows, blood flowed from her forehead. This was the power of a demon. Being slightly kind to others would reap multiple times the gratitude. Lady, I have something I need you to do tonight, Gregor said. Yes, Lord. Fear flashed in the woman's eyes, but then her expression became firm. Chapter 36. The kitchen was very large. The kitchens of nobles were all very large. The kitchens of ordinary nobles usually had the capacity to serve meals to more than 300 people. Normally, not many guests came to Clegane Keep, and Clegane Keep rarely received other nobles. The number of cooks indicated that this was a place that did not welcome guests, and it also showed that Gregor Clegane's popularity was extremely poor. But Gregor's kitchen was still very large, with the ability to easily serve meals to 200 people. Following Gregor into the kitchen, Lady Alan appeared calm on the surface, but was uneasy in her heart. She and her husband, Alan, had never worked in a kitchen before. If Lord Gregor liked to do things between men and women in the kitchen, she could only accept it. Her husband's 2 younger brothers had already been assigned to the mining team, her 7-year-old son, Andy Charlotte, had become a scholar's apprentice, and her elderly parents and other family members had become servants of Clegane Keep. Some were assigned to the horse breeding stewards, some to the service stewards, some were helpers to the cooks, some were in charge of the chicken coop, and some were in charge of the livestock pen, while she herself seemed to belong to Lord Gregor. Lady Alan was only worried that her body could not withstand Gregor's energy. This was a huge body that made women afraid. Rumor had it that his first 2 wives had been tortured to death by him. Gregor saw Lady Alan's nervousness and her attempt to hide her fear. The woman smiled, but was actually very scared. This was a somewhat attractive mature woman. But Gregor did not intend to push this woman down just like that. Even the king was not safe, and had poison testers by his side. When the food was served, someone would specifically try each dish first, and only if it was safe would the king eat it. The delicacies and wines sent by ministers and foreigners also had special poison testers to sample them first. Rabbits don't eat the grass near their burrows because they need the grass to protect their burrows from predators. To live a safer and longer life in this world, the people around you must be good to them, and make them grateful and loyal, just like Polliver. Madam, Open this lid, Gregor said, pointing to a wooden lid. Yes, my lord. Lady Allen opened the lid, and what she saw was a jar full of salt. Yellow salt. Lady Allen was very familiar with this salt. This was mineral salt mined from the mountains. Everyone ate this salt. Lady Allen's family also ate this salt. The lady's husband was a knight, and their life was considered wealthy among the locals. Open the lid next to it. Yes, my lord. Next to the salt jar was another large-bellied earthenware jar, covered with the same wooden lid. Lady Allen lifted the lid, and she saw a jar full of snow white. What is this, my lord? In the light of the red candles as thick as a child's arm on the wall, this snow white also had a faint reflection. Salt. Salt. Lady Allen said in surprise. Salt. Snow salt. Named by Duke Tywin. My lord, I have never seen snow salt. Taste it. Yes, my lord. The salt was very salty and had a bitter taste when eaten raw. Lady Allen stretched out her finger and lightly dipped it in the snow salt, then put it on the tip of her tongue and licked it. The salt was indeed very salty, but it had no bitter taste. Lady Allen suddenly remembered that the dishes and soup she had eaten tonight had no bitter or astringent taste of salt. Because she had been nervous and afraid of the mountain, she had ignored the different taste of the food tonight. Salt, the king of all flavors, the head of all flavors. Madam, would you be willing to help me with a favor? As you wish, my lord. I would like to ask you to be the steward of my kitchen, responsible for producing snow salt for us Cleganes to eat. I will also gradually send some to the great nobles of the Westerlands. Lady Allen felt that she had some difficulty breathing. The legendary mountain was suddenly using honorifics to speak to her. As you wish, my lord. Good, I will teach you how to turn this yellow, bitter, and astringent salt into our snow salt. This technique is very simple, but I need you to swear to keep it a secret. I swear in the name of the Charlotte family's honor and the 7 gods. Lady Allen raised her right hand and said falteringly. Gregor watched Lady Allen finish her oath. This was a ritual, and also a rule that people in this world commonly followed. The faith of the 7 was very useful. Madam, let's make some snow salt now. Yes, my lord. Looking at Gregor's desireless eyes, Lady Allen's nervousness and fear gradually relaxed. When she and Gregor walked into the kitchen alone, her whole body was as tense as a bow. So, Gregor added half a pot of water to a large pot, then poured in half a ladle of salt, and began to stir. Madam, light the fire. Lady Allen lit the fire. Gregor put the yellow salt in a basin, and from time to time added some salt to the pot, and then added some water. As the temperature in the pot rose, all the salt in the pot melted into the water. When the salt added to the water no longer melts into the water, stop adding salt. Yes, my lord. Bring the salt water to a boil. Yes, my lord. After the salt has completely melted into the water, madam, what do you see in the pot? Gregor held the candle as thick as a child's arm in front of the pot. He scooped the bottom of the pot with a spatula in his other hand, and then brought the spatula to Lady Allen. Lady Allen saw some small black and brown particles. I see the dregs of the salt, my lord. Yes, continue to boil it over high heat. Yes, my lord. Lady Allen's fear of the mountain gradually faded imperceptibly. She developed a strong interest in producing snow salt. Madam, come over here. Lady Allen put the firewood into the stove and followed Gregor to a cross. Lady Allen saw this cross for the first time. The cross was made of wood, and a rope hung down from a horizontal beam above, tying the cross. The cross was a flexible wooden frame that could rotate 360 degrees. Lady Allen tried it and saw that a large iron nail passed through a small hole to string together 2 wooden strips of the same length. Gregor opened a large lid next to him and took out cloths from the jar, one by one, as well as smooth silk. When unfolded, the 4 corners of the cloth were tied to the 4 corners of the cross. In a while, let the boiling water cool down a bit, then put the boiling water into a wooden bucket, carry it over, pour it into this filter, the salt water will flow into the wooden bucket below, and the dregs will remain on the cloth. This way, there will be no small dregs particles in the salt. What a clever method! Lady Allen's voice was both surprised and delighted. After the salt water is boiled, it can also remove the bitter taste in the salt. But to completely remove the bitter taste and astringency, it needs to be filtered and boiled repeatedly. Then how many times does it need to be done? You can try to do it and see how many times it takes to achieve the best results. You can also make several cross-filtration frames and choose more detailed and dense cloths to filter. You can also experiment with the number of layers of filtration to see which number of layers is best. Yes, my lord. Pour the filtered salt water into the pot and continue to boil it until the water is gone, and the salt will return. But be careful, if the fire is too strong, the salt at the bottom of the pot will become, causing waste. I remember it, my lord. Lady Allen's voice was very excited. We can sell snow salt in the 7 kingdoms, my lord. Snow salt is not for sale. Yes, my lord. An hour later, Gregor and Lady Allen walked out of the kitchen, talking and laughing. Lady Allen's face had a rosy color. She followed Gregor into Gregor's room. What was coming would come. Gregor needed her to manage the kitchen, buy and sell rice and vegetables, arrange and recruit more servants, and needed her to boil snow salt. She had a solid feeling about the safety of her family's life. If she tried her best to satisfy Lord Mountain again tonight and deliberately please him, her child Andy would be able to grow up healthy under Scholar Hallie's care without any accidents. Her psychology changed from fear and trepidation to catering and ingratiating. Looking at Lady Allen's eyes, Gregor knew that as long as he gave her more kindness, her catering and ingratiation would turn into gratitude. Gratitude would go a step further and turn into gratefulness, and then he would ask Scholar Hallie's to take her to the chapel to add a ritual, a sworn oath of allegiance to the faith of the 7 to Gregor personally, and she would become a loyal fan, a loyal mistress. It was popular for nobles in the 7 kingdoms to keep mistresses, with no limit to the number. Chapter 37. My lady, you are truly beautiful, I long to have you by my side tonight, Gregor said. As you wish, my lord, it would be my honor to serve you. Lady Erin's cheeks flushed slightly, adding to her loveliness. Gregor never considered himself a noble man, good people and noble people were worlds apart. On the contrary, he considered himself quite cunning, having taken on the mountain's demonic attributes after transmigrating. He was no longer the engineering student he once was, but he wasn't purely the mountain either. My lady, you only arrived today, and you were tortured in the Silver Hall by the Charlottes. I suggest you get a good night's sleep with Andy Charlotte tonight. Andy Charlotte. Lady Erin's precious 7-year-old son. Lady Erin looked up, staring at Gregor's sincere expression in disbelief. Gregor understood that in Lady Erin's heart, in her previous perception, he was an inhuman beast, especially towards women. Gregor was insatiable, raping many common women and defiling the reputations of some noble ladies. He was notorious. No dog would abandon a bone it had in its mouth, especially a fragrant and meaty one. Lady Erin was young and had decent looks, her most beautiful feature being her large eyes. Moreover, having the knight's lady was more fulfilling than Gregor raping the clumsy, rough-skinned peasant women of the Riverlands. But Gregor elegantly declined Lady Erin's voluntary offering. Lady Erin left Gregor's room and went to the maester's quarters on the 2nd floor. When she held her 7-year-old son in her arms, she was still in a daze, unable to believe it was real. That night, Lady Erin found it hard to fall asleep. Her son, comforted by his mother's presence, slept soundly and sweetly, but she tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Gregor's understanding and respectful attitude towards her was something she had never heard of. This Lord Gregor was different from the crude, ruthless mountain that was rumored. Having escaped one disaster, Lady Erin felt strangely. Her intuition told her that this Gregor was not as bloody and terrifying as the rumors suggested. He wasn't as beastly towards women. What surprised Lady Erin even more was that Gregor was also very clever. He had come up with a wonderful way to filter mineral salt. From the construction of the cross, the filtration of mineral salt residue, to the removal of bitterness with high-temperature boiling water, Lady Erin felt that Lord Gregor possessed the wisdom of a maester. As she left Lord Gregor's room, Lady Erin couldn't help but look back. She saw the desire in Gregor's eyes for her, he appreciated Lady Erin's beauty and maturity, and he didn't mind the lady being his mistress, but he first considered Lady Erin's abused body and severely traumatized feelings. For a woman who had arrived at Clegane's Keep in a prison wagon for less than a day, physical and mental trauma and fatigue were certain. The trauma of losing her husband, the injustice of being forcibly slandered as guilty by Charlotte of the Silver Hall, the pain of losing her home and personal freedom. These were all painful brands on her soul. But since coming out of the prison wagon until now, none of Lady Erin's family members had been subjected to inhuman abuse, which was completely different from being forced to confess in the Silver Hall. Compared to Sir Gregor's demeanour, the actions of Charlotte of the Silver Hall were more like a demon. Night. Casterly Rock. Lannister Keep. Lord Tywin, devoid of hair, had a small personal habit. He liked to comb his golden side whiskers over and over again in front of the mirror. Knock knock knock. The door was knocked. Enter. Lord Tywin said. The bedroom door was pushed open, and Maester Potter entered, holding a parchment letter in his hand. Read. My lord, this letter is a bit special. Oh. The Maester unfolded the top half of the letter on the desk, using a ruler to hold down the left and right corners of the top half of the letter paper. This was a long letter, with pictures and text. Lord Tywin's face was expressionless, his light green eyes, dotted with gold, were piercing. The first picture he saw was an earthenware jar filled with salt, with the note below being earthenware jar mineral salt. The second picture showed a person carrying a wooden bucket filled with salt, and he was using a wooden ladle to scoop the salt into a large pot filled with water, with flames burning in the stove hole. The third picture was a strange cross with something resembling a bib hanging on it, and a large wooden barrel under the frame. The text below the picture noted a snow salt filter. The text explained in detail how to use and make the snow salt filter. The last picture was putting the filtered salt water back into a large pot to re-simmer over low heat, until all the water in the pot evaporated, leaving only salt in the pot. While Lord Tywin was reading the letter, Maester Potter was secretly watching the Duke's reaction. Lord Tywin's face showed no special reaction, but his eyes flickered. Maester Harry's painting is okay, but his handwriting is terrible. Yes, my lord. Tell Maester Harry to be careful not to be beaten to death by the mountain. My lord, this letter was written to you by Sir Gregor through Maester Harry. Lord Tywin stopped his movements, raised his head, his eyes strange. Gregor asked Maester Harry to write me a letter. Yes, my lord. Is he still Gregor? He couldn't have thought of these things. We didn't even think of it. Yes, my lord. It looks very simple, but none of us thought of such a simple method. The simple process of snow salt production is actually full of wisdom. Lord Tywin's gaze became sharp. Maester, do you believe that this was created by Gregor? Has Gregor suddenly become so wise? 7 gods above, I don't believe it at all. I don't believe it either. Maester Potter paused for a moment and said, My lord, there is also a new invention on Gregor's letter. Oh. Maester Potter unfolded the lower half of the letter paper, which had a drawing of something that Lord Tywin had never seen before, which overall looked like the number 6. What is this? Lord Gregor named it a military whistle. Military whistle. Lord Tywin heard this name for the first time, and saw this thing for the first time. His gaze fell on the written instructions, military whistle, 2 concave iron pieces combined, with a small iron bead in the middle of the belly, a flat mouth held in the mouth, inhaling and blowing, the airflow enters from the flat entrance, filling the belly of the military whistle, stimulating the small iron bead in the belly to roll, increasing airflow resistance. The airflow is forcefully ejected from the narrow holes in the whistle shell, and the iron whistle emits a sharp whining sound. With training, the iron whistle sound can be long or short, high or low, with amazing penetrating power, and the high-pitched sound stings the eardrums, which is beneficial for issuing orders in large-scale military battles. Lord Tywin looked at the text and graphics back and forth many times. The 2 narrow holes are too thin. How can the iron bead be put into the iron whistle? My lord, first put the iron bead into the whistle shell, and then close the 2 whistle shells together. In this world, the level of iron craftsmanship is already very high. Many decorations are made of iron into various decorative forms, such as flowers, grass, figures, or beasts. Did Gregor also invent this military whistle? Lord Tywin's eyes changed, and his voice also changed. Maester Harry's letter says so. Maester Potter himself couldn't believe his words. Maester Harry also said that the soldiers of Clegane are already using military whistles to train, and it is very useful. Write a letter immediately, and tell Gregor to bring the military whistle and his soldiers back to Casterly Rock tomorrow. Yes, my lord. Maester Potter respectfully, my lord, Sir Gregor also invented something called chopsticks. Maester Harry said that he uses chopsticks instead of knives, forks, and spoons to eat. Chapter 38. Chopsticks. Yes, chopsticks. What do they look like? They're simply 2 small bamboo sticks of equal length, round at the bottom and square at the top. They're indeed more convenient for eating noodles and picking up vegetables from soup. Sir Haleen said Gregor is planning to have chopsticks and other tableware made of silver. Silver chopsticks. If we use chopsticks, will we still use knives to cut roast meat? Do you have a picture of the chopsticks? Sir Helene only mentioned chopsticks in his letter to me, there's no picture. Helene's private letter to you? Yes, my lord. Show me your private letter. Yes, my lord. Casterly Rock is a city built inside a massive rock formation, about 20 miles long, 15 miles wide, and 70 meters high. Calling it a rock is not as accurate as calling it a stone mountain. To ensure the interior of Casterly Rock receives enough light, many giant skylights were cut into the outer shell of the giant stone. Countless giant glass panels were also installed on the top of the stone. However, even on a sunny day, the city center still requires blazing torches at corners and remote places. These torches are tended to by dedicated people and burn all year round. Inside Casterly Rock, a spiraling avenue connects to the Lion's Mouth. This spiraling avenue is connected to many major roads, large and small, like a spider web, forming the city's transportation network. At the end of the spiraling avenue are the Lannister family's great yard and main castle, the citadel, the cavalry barracks and stables, and the kennels. Continuing up the small road behind the great yard leads directly to the high watchtower on the mountaintop. Gregor led his cavalry of 63 men eastward from Clegane's Keep, onto the coastal road, passing by the high walls of Lanny Sport, and heading north along the coastal road. After an hour, the cavalry thundered into the Lion's Mouth section of Casterly Rock. The Lannister soldiers guarding the city gate saw Gregor riding towards them from afar. He was too tall, and his warhorse was a carefully selected steed, a head taller than ordinary horses. Behind Gregor, the banner with 3 hounds was held by the burly mine worker Blackstone. The gate soldiers dared not be negligent and hurriedly opened several city gates that normally didn't need to be opened. The Lion's Mouth has 3 large city gates side by side. Gregor and his 6 riders rode abreast, thundering into the Lion's Mouth and straight up the spiraling avenue inside the city. The city gate guards and patrolling soldiers quickly stood at attention and saluted Sir Gregor. Gregor used to ignore them, and he still does. He didn't even bother to hum, not even a glance, and roared past. Whether they were soldiers, captains, centurions, or knight generals, Gregor didn't care about them. His subordinate officers and soldiers were equally arrogant and disdainful. The 6 riders rode abreast up the spiraling avenue, which became steeper and narrower as they advanced. Because the spiraling avenue was the city's main thoroughfare, connecting other important roads radiating throughout the city, the avenue was crowded with people, some driving horse-drawn carriages and ox carts, and many carrying burdens. Casterly Rock has a natural small harbor inside. Many people do business in the small harbor. High-end silks and exquisite porcelain from across the narrow sea are imported through the small harbor next to the Hall of Heroes. Because sea water has eroded a very deep depression at the bottom of the giant rock over thousands of years, some cargo ships can directly sail into Casterly Rock through the depression to unload their goods. This small harbor also supports many small vendors and porters. The horse-drawn carriages, ox carts, and workers carrying burdens on their heads and shoulders mostly come from the western harbor. They use the avenue to deliver goods to the city's large and small shops and thousands of households. Gregor crashed all the way through, and the coachman and others hurriedly abandoned their horse-drawn carriages and ox carts and fled down the spiraling avenue. Both sides of the road were shops and residential houses, and there were many adults and children coming and going on the road. Gregor and his party did not care at all, yelling and cursing loudly from afar. People dodged one after another, hurrying like stray dogs and scurrying like fish escaping the net. From afar, people hurried to avoid them. The Knight Raff the Sweetling even blew the military whistle, directing the cavalry to recklessly gallop closely behind Lord Gregor. This arrogant cavalry team, without slowing down on the city's avenue, kicked over many roadside stalls. Those who were slow to dodge, or who stood by the road to avoid but did not flee far, were whipped severely by the cavalry's horsewhips. Amidst the screams of those poor people falling down, the cavalry laughed and rode away. For the common people, being arbitrarily beaten by Gregor's officers and soldiers was quite normal. If they were to blame, they could only blame themselves for being slow to dodge. On the viewing platform of the great yard, Tywin Lannister saw a banner with 3 hounds waving high, galloping from the spiraling avenue. A glimmer of appreciation flashed in Tywin's eyes. He actually liked Gregor as a blade, but Tywin never said it and had no words of praise. The rewards he gave Gregor were never much, not comparable to other nobles. He did this intentionally. A vicious dog must not be fed too full. Gregor's blade is terrible, sharp, and loyal. When Gregor caused trouble outside, even slightly bigger troubles, he would tell Tywin Lannister the whole truth after seeing him in person, and would never lie. Tywin had always been very satisfied with this. Many great nobles didn't know why Tywin had always protected a scumbag like Gregor, reused him, and protected him when Gregor tarnished the honor of some noble women. What they didn't understand was that Gregor's loyalty and frankness to Tywin far exceeded theirs. Gregor, who suddenly became smart, produced snow salt, military whistles, and chopsticks. Gregor also took the initiative to have Sir Halene report these pieces of information to Duke Tywin. Gregor's loyalty had never changed. This vicious dog knows who his master is. But even if Gregor wanted to hide it, he couldn't. Sir Halene by his side was one of Duke Tywin's eyes. Gregor galloped into the great yard. The 5 cavalry centurions of the yard had already lined up neatly to greet him. Gregor is the general of these 5 centurions. Tywin Lannister has always maintained 500 family cavalry. The centurions are all named Lannister. The Lannister family branches are numerous in the Westerlands, concentrated in Lannisport, the largest city in the Westerlands. Some of the cavalry come from Lannister branches, and some are direct or collateral relatives of the Lannister family and its branches. This elite and loyal cavalry of 500 men is commanded by Gregor. In peacetime, this most powerful guard cavalry regiment simply has no chance to show its strength. Lord Gregor! The 5 centurions shouted in unison, saluting Gregor on horseback. This most loyal cavalry team rarely goes out in daily life. Usually, when Gregor patrols the border, arrests criminals, and cracks down on disobedient nobles, he takes Raff the Sweetling and his gang of commoner desperado soldiers. Gregor ignored the polite greetings of the 5 Lannister family centurions. He always looked down on the Lannister centurions, thinking they were cowards and weaklings, disgusting dog spawn who pretended to have false noble upbringing in front of him. In addition to the family direct cavalry regiment, Tywin also has a professional free folk army of 1,000 men, a mixed cavalry and infantry army, which is also under Gregor's command and jurisdiction in case of emergency. Raff the Sweetling and others come from the junior officers in the mixed cavalry and infantry army. They share the same cruel and bloodthirsty nature as Gregor and admire and worship Gregor's large and small misdeeds, taking them as examples. Gregor opened his visor and raised his hand to Tywin Lannister on the viewing platform. His voice was like thunder, "Duke, please watch Knight Raff demonstrate the cavalry using the military whistle." Duke Tywin nodded in agreement. He already knew from the letter that Gregor had knighted Raff and given him the Clegane surname. Gregor's voice being like thunder is not an exaggeration. All the generals in this world have a set of techniques specifically for training their shouts. They practice almost every day, just like the wandering singers in this world practice their voices, the cavalrymen practice riding horses every day, and the archers practice archery every day. Chapter 39. At the sound of Rav's military whistle, 63 cavalrymen demonstrated the wedge formation specifically used to tear apart enemy battle formations, the fully defensive circular formation, the square formation for frontal marching and facing enemies, the semi-encircling arc formation, the sweeping formation spread out in a line, the column formation for marching. Tywin Lannister saw that the cavalrymen were very well coordinated, which made him feel good. Although these were Gregor's family cavalry, they were actually part of his, Tywin Lannister's, strength, and taking them out wouldn't bring shame to the Westerlands. For a newly formed cavalry unit, mastering all the formations and formation changes in a short period of time was remarkable. Tywin also knew that 2 recruits had only recently joined. They were the brothers of the knight, Alan Charlett, who poisoned Gregor. For the commoners of the Westerlands, those with slightly better conditions learned to ride horses from a young age. This was a world where everyone was a soldier. Usually, people went about their business, but once there was war, they had to immediately put down what they were doing, put on military uniforms, and go to battle. However, knowing how to ride a horse and being proficient in cavalry battle formations were 2 completely different things. Without professional and arduous training, it was difficult for so many cavalrymen to form a perfect whole in various cavalry battle formations. Gregor had military talent, there was no doubt about that. But the performance of the cavalry he had assembled in such a short time was too dazzling. However, thinking about the fact that under Gregor's terrifying pressure, not a single cavalryman dared to slack off during training was an undeniable truth. Tywin Lannister knew this well. His own 500-strong cavalry guard was also trained by Gregor, and not a single cavalryman dared to defy Gregor's authority, even though they were Lannisters or relatives of the Lannister family. Because any soldier who dared to disobey orders had either been beaten to death by Gregor or thrown into the underground black cells by Tywin. In this world, there were not many purely professional soldiers, only the great nobles could afford to maintain professional legions. Generally speaking, even the wealthiest of the great nobles would not keep more than 2,000 professional soldiers year-round. Ordinary nobles kept anywhere from 300 to 1,000 professional soldiers. Even a wealthy man exceeding a nation like Duke Tywin Lannister, usually kept no more than 1,500 professional soldiers in Casterly Rock. Of course, his daughter, Queen Cersei Lannister, also kept 500 Westerland Red Cloaks in King's Landing, because the son-in-law king was spending recklessly and heavily in debt. The 500 Westerland Red Cloaks around Queen Cersei were also being paid for by Tywin Lannister. But this time, Tywin summoned Gregor to bring troops back to Casterly Rock, not to see him show off his cavalry training results, but he was concerned about a new thing. A small gadget that had never appeared in the Seven Kingdoms from ancient times to the present, the military whistle. The sound of the military whistle was indeed sharp and high-pitched, and even in the sound of horses' hooves and the shouts of warriors, its penetration and recognition were still clear and unmistakable, which was very useful for issuing orders in the battle formation of thousands of troops. When Tywin Lannister was 17 years old, he responded to the king's call and participated in the War of the Nine Penny Kings and became famous in one fell swoop. He and Brynden Blackfish Tully of the Riverlands were known as the two outstanding figures of the Seven Kingdoms at that time. Both young men performed impressively in battle, both charged into battle and killed the enemy's chief leader, helping the Legion win the War of the Nine Penny Kings. Having experienced life and death in the bloody flames of war, Tywin knew how important it was to convey the general's orders in the midst of thousands of troops. It was actually very difficult to accurately transmit military orders and direct the army to advance, retreat, and encircle in the midst of shouting and neighing. People's throats would gradually be damaged in loud shouts and affect the transmission of sound, and no one could maintain their initial loud voice throughout the battle, let alone the general himself who had to participate in the battle and charge ahead. If the invention of this military whistle could protect the general's throat while emitting a recognizability that exceeded the general's loud shouts, this would be a very practical invention and would obviously help the Westerland's army's combat power to a higher level. "Show me the military whistle," Duke Tywin said. From beginning to end, he kept a straight face, showing no praise for Gregor and his outstanding cavalry. Being cold, ruthless, and without a smile was Tywin Lannister's standard. Ravd Clegane jumped off his warhorse, ran up to the viewing platform, and respectfully handed the several military whistles he had prepared to Tywin. "Teach me," Duke Tywin said. "Yes, Your Grace." The entire great training ground, hundreds of people, including the Duke's 500 cavalry, maesters, and servants, all held their breath and watched Ravd Clegane teach Duke Tywin Lannister how to blow the military whistle on the viewing platform. Apart from the snorting and occasional neighing of war horses in the great training ground, no one dared to make a sound. If Gregor was a devil, frightening, then Tywin was a demon king, even more untouchable. Since Tyrion Lannister, the imp, was born in 273 AC, for a full 25 years, no one had seen Tywin show even a trace of a smile. After half an hour, Duke Tywin stopped learning. He decided to implement the military whistle system in the Westerland's army. "Sir Gregor, you invented the military whistle, not bad." Even though it was a remarkable invention, it only received a not bad evaluation from Tywin. "What do you want me to reward you with? What do you want me to reward you with?" This sentence was understated, but actually very weighty. Duke Tywin never asked his subordinates for their opinions when rewarding them. He always directly rewarded them with what he thought was appropriate. His inquiry to the mountain this time already showed the importance he placed on it in his heart. Not only Maester Potter beside Tywin, the 5 centurions of his cavalry camp, and the hundreds of cavalrymen, but even Gregor himself was slightly moved. Tywin Lannister was richer than the world, but never generous. But today he actually inquired about Gregor's opinion, and Gregor estimated that it was also related to the production of snow salt. Snow salt production was only slightly worse than mining gold mines as a means of getting rich, and being able to solve the bitter taste of eating salt and the astringent problem of a little sediment in the salt in this world was actually very remarkable. "Please grant me a marriage, Your Grace," Gregor said. Duke Tywin was stunned. Gregor's request surprised everyone. Since his 2 wives died, he himself had lost interest in marriage, and the great and small nobles of the Westerlands all turned pale at the mention of the mountain. Both of his wives had died strangely, both accidentally falling and breaking their necks. "Which family's daughter have you taken a fancy to?" From Crake Hall. "Jane Westerling." Duke Tywin's pale green eyes narrowed slightly. The Westerling family is the oldest family in the Westerlands, and its noble bloodline is unmatched. Lord Gawain Westerling is even more proud, he will not listen to me and marry Jane Westerling to you. Your Grace, when I prayed before the statues of the 7 gods, I heard the will of the 7 gods, the 7 gods want me to take Jane Westerling as my wife. The 7 gods? Yes, Your Grace, the wisdom of my inventions all comes from the will of the 7 gods. To pay tribute to the 7 gods, the September of the 7 has been completed in the Clegane lands. Who is Jane Westerling? Gregor knew it like the back of his hand. The Jane he wanted to marry was the beautiful wife in the TV series before he crossed over who led to Robb Stark's death at the Red Wedding. In fact, in the original story, what moved Robb Stark was not her medical skills, but her beauty, kindness, noble birth, and elegant temperament, plus the versatility of a noble lady. Jane Westerling was born in 283 AC, and is just 15 years old this year. Chapter 40. Cliff Rock is north of Casterly Rock, about 300 miles away, and is also a seaside city. The sigil of House Westerling is 6 white seashells on a yellow sand field. The 6 seashells are arranged in a triangle, 1 seashell in the front row, 2 seashells in the second row, and 3 seashells in the third row. The sand and shells represent Cliff Rock's location on the shores of the Sunset Sea. The words of House Westerling are honor, not honors. The Westerlings are a noble and ancient house in the Westerlands, descendants of the first men, with an old and noble bloodline. However, as generations of Westerlings passed, the gold and silver mines within their lands were exhausted early on, and their fiefdoms were constantly shrinking due to the pressure from the surrounding powerful nobles. By the time it came to Gawain Westerling, the family's strength had completely declined, except for the ancient bloodline that could still bring some empty fame and glory to the family. For many generations, their economic income had to rely mainly on seafood, rather than gold and silver mines. Outside the territory of Cliff Rock, there was a large area rich in gold mines, but it had nothing to do with House Westerling. To this day, that treasure land full of gold mines remains barren, and it has 2 names that chill the hearts of the Westerland nobles, Castamere and Tarbeck Hall. The fief of House Rain, the most powerful vassal of the Westerlands, was Castamere, and the territory of the great House Tarbeck was in Tarbeck Hall. Because the gold mines in their territories were too abundant, House Rain and House Tarbeck grew stronger day by day, and their strength gradually became comparable to that of their liege lord, House Lannister. Because Duke Tywin's father was weak, House Rain and House Tarbeck thought they had an opportunity and no longer took House Lannister seriously. The 2 families, unaware of the immensity of the heavens and the earth, finally seriously offended House Lannister. So, in 261 AC, Tywin Lannister, at the young age of 19, led thousands of family warriors to completely eliminate the 2 families. Men, women, and children of both families were all killed, leaving no one alive. In order to deter other nobles in the Westerlands, Castamere and Tarbeck Hall remain barren to this day, and Tywin has not yet enfeoffed Castamere and Tarbeck Hall to any of his vassals. The famous song The Reigns of Castamere, which is sung throughout the 7 kingdoms, originated from this battle. When Tywin was unable to break through the underground city of Castamere, he dug open the canals and flooded it, drowning everyone in Castamere. The meaning of the rains in the song refers to the flooding of Castamere. Outside the Westerling family's territory were Castamere and Tarbeck Hall, which could be described as gold everywhere, but the family did not dare to take it, watching the gold all over the ground and the family declining year after year. A year ago, Gregor had seen Jane Westerling, the eldest daughter of House Westerling, in Casterly Rock. At that time, her beauty and demeanor shocked Casterly Rock. Gregor, who had transmigrated, knew that Jane Westerling's beauty was far more beautiful than the actress in the TV series. Jane came to Casterly Rock with her father, Lord Gawain Westerling. Her father, Gawain Westerling, brought his carefully cultivated eldest daughter, full of confidence, to propose marriage to House Lannister. Tywin Lannister had a brother named Kevin Lannister, who had always been Tywin's assistant and admirer. Kevin Lannister had a son named Lancel Lannister, who was born in the same year as Jane Westerling. Both of them were born in 283 AC. Lancel was handsome and worked in the royal palace as King Robert Baratheon's personal wine server. Gregor knew that Lancel was the handsome young man in the TV series who was always standing next to Robert holding a wine jug. Jane was born beautiful and graceful. After the Westerling family's careful training, she became even more elegant and talented. The purpose of the great effort that Lord Gawain's family spent in cultivating their eldest daughter was to hope that the family could climb up to a great noble through her, and from then on, revitalize the family's prosperity with the wealth of their daughter. However, Kevin Lannister was a secular nobleman who only valued wealth, which was very similar to Tywin Lannister. Jane's beauty and talent were impeccable, but the Westerling family was too poor and their family was too declining. It would be easy to agree to this marriage, but Lord Gawain would inevitably make constant assistance requests to House Lannister because of this marriage. Kevin Lannister, who became more stingy the more money he had, rejected the marriage. This caused Lord Gawain to lose face and suffer a blow to his dignity. Faced with the powerful House Lannister, Lord Gawain had to take his eldest daughter Jane back to his cliff rock in disgrace. At the same time as the news of Lord Gawain's failure to marry into House Lannister spread, Jane Westerling's beauty and elegance also spread simultaneously throughout the Westerlands. Westerland nobles went to propose marriage one after another, but these nobles did not catch Lord Gawain's eye and were all rejected by Lord Gawain. Jane Westerling was 16 years old, by Westerosi reckoning, and had not yet married or been betrothed. In this world, she was already considered an older girl. The reason why Jane was older and still did not have a marriage partner was very simple. The Westerling family was an old and noble great house, and Lord Gawain Westerling looked down on ordinary nobles, but the truly powerful and wealthy great nobles looked down on the Jane Westerling family for being too poor. For Sir Gregor Clegane to want to marry Jane Westerling, as the number one villain in the Westerlands and the number one scoundrel in the Seven Kingdoms, was purely a fool's dream. That was absolutely impossible. With Lord Gawain's high aspirations and paper-thin fate, it was estimated that he would faint from anger upon hearing of this marriage. Although the centurions, knights, and sergeants in the great training yard thought that Gregor's proposal to marry into the Westerling family was too ridiculous, no one dared to laugh out loud. Duke Tywin said, "Sir Gregor, since you have already begun to raise your own family soldiers, then I approve you to publicly sell snow salt in the Westerlands, but you must not evade taxes. As for marriage, I will keep an eye out for suitable women from other noble families for you." In the Seven Kingdoms, only great dukes and the king were qualified to operate salt businesses. In this world, salt was almost as valuable as gold to ordinary families. On this continent, salt was monopolized by the great dukes and the king. Although King Robert's laws were lenient and the handling of private salt sales was not strict, turning a blind eye to it, leading to the rampant operation of private salt, it was unbelievable to publicly grant a baronet the right to operate salt, to publicly sell it and legally. The centurions, knights, sergeants, soldiers, and servants in the great training yard all thought they had heard wrong. Maester Vorder was completely stunned in surprise. "No, my lord, I only want to marry Jane Westerling, I am not interested in anything else," Gregor said resolutely. He had always been impolite in his speech and was a rude person. Duke Tywin was used to it. But only Gregor dared to speak so loudly in front of Duke Tywin. Chapter 41. Casterly Rock is located on the western coastline of the northernmost part of the Westerlands and is the castle of House Westerling. Due to a lack of funds, the castle has not been repaired for many years and looks like a ruin on a cliff from the outside. Morning. The main castle in the city. Study. Lord Gawain sat wearily at a desk. He had spent the night in the study. There was a small bed in the study, but he suffered from insomnia and did not sleep all night. The Earl frowned, his hair was disheveled, his big black beard was also messy and he had not had time to comb it, and the long beard on his chin was curled. The paint on the desk in front of him was peeling off, and on the desk was an ancestral map of the Casterly Rock territory. The map had 3 colors, red for the outermost area, blue for the middle area, and black for the innermost area near Casterly Rock. More than a dozen small red tofu blocks on the map were markers of Lord Gawain and his deceased father selling off the territory passed down by their ancestors. Every time a piece of land was sold to subsidize the family, Lord Gawain and his father, who had not yet passed away, would use a red pen to mark off that location on the ancestral map. Looking at the dozen or so red blocks of different sizes, Lord Gawain hoped that one day he could revitalize the family and buy back the land he had sold at a high price. Behind the red tofu blocks were 9 blue squares, which were marks for mortgaging land to nearby nobles due to lack of money. If he did not redeem these 9 places with money within the specified time, the blue color of these 9 places would soon turn into red marks. Gawain was not old, in his prime at around 30 years old, but he already had crow's feet at the corners of his eyes and forehead wrinkles. Although the family burden was heavy and money was becoming more and more difficult to earn, in order to maintain the family's appearance and the honor of the ancient nobility, his family's servants had not been reduced at all. Whenever family members went out, the things they wore and the accessories they wore were still very high-end and exquisite. The Earl looked at the map in front of him, holding a quill in his hand, with a small bottle of red paint in front of him. His quill hovered over the map, moving slowly. Because the family urgently needed money, Lord Gawain was preparing to sell a small piece of land again, to House Marbrand of Ashmark, about 100 miles south. Lord Marbrand's younger sister was married to Tywin Lannister's second younger brother, Tygett Lannister. Tygett was a famous knight in the Seven Kingdoms, and his martial arts were the best among Duke Tywin's 4 brothers, but he unfortunately died of smallpox a few years ago. He had a very good relationship with the imp, Tyrion. Lord Gawain looked at the ancestral map and sighed deeply, deciding to sell another piece of land cheaply. His pen was about to paint it, but, knock, knock. There was a very polite knock on the door outside. House Westerling was very particular about etiquette, and the servants were trained to be very well-mannered. "Wait a moment," Lord Gawain said. "Yes, my lord." A very soft female voice came from the door. Lord Gawain got up and came to the dressing mirror. After a while, he changed his clothes and groomed his hair and beard, making him look completely different from the dispirited and soulless person who had been sighing just now. "Come in." Lord Gawain sat back at his desk, the map already rolled up and gently placed in the drawer of the desk. A clean and dignified maid walked in with small steps, silently, her voice elegant. "My lord, a letter from Duke Tywin Lannister of Casterly Rock." "Give me the letter," Lord Gawain said with a smile. Even to his own servants, Lord Gawain showed the good manners of a true nobleman. "Yes, my lord." The maid handed a parchment scroll to Lord Gawain. Lord Gawain did not unfold the letter. He watched the maid leave the study, and after watching the maid gently close the door, he slowly unfolded Duke Tywin's letter. His gaze fell on the letter and he was immediately stunned, a little disbelieving. He closed his eyes slightly, slowly opened them again, and slowly read the letter again. As his gaze moved, a smile slowly bloomed on Lord Gawain's face, a long-lost bright smile. After breakfast, 8 guards and 2 servants on horseback escorted a carriage with curtains made of noble silk fabric out of Casterly Rock. The carriage was spacious and high-end, pulled by 4 good horses, and 2 well-dressed coachmen sat in the driver's position. 2 people were sitting in the carriage, one was Lord Gawain, and the other was the bright-eyed and white-toothed beauty, Jane Westerling. Jane had a slender figure, a standard S shape. To use Gregor's evaluation of her in his mind, Jane was beautiful and moving, and her figure hidden under her skirt was sexy and alluring, which was in line with this world's definition of beauty and also in line with the standard of beauty in Gregor's mind. She had naturally curly chestnut hair, a very beautiful heart-shaped face, and amber eyes. What the nobles in this world appreciated even more was that Jane had a fat butt, which was a sign of good childbearing for the next generation, and it was also a feature that young, unmarried women in this world wanted to have, which could help them win in competition with the opposite sex. But in Gregor's eyes, this was called a bubble butt, which had little to do with good childbearing, but was mainly sexy. Jane wore a knitted silk dress from across the narrow sea, elegant and beautiful, with charming demeanor. But men can always see through women's flowing skirts and see the more precious physical beauty covered by women's skirts. "Father, I always feel a little uneasy in my heart," Jane said softly, her eyebrows slightly furrowed. "Don't worry, how many girls in the 7 Kingdoms want to be Tywin Lannister's adopted daughter," Lord Gawain said with high spirits. Climbing up to the Lannister family was a dream come true for Lord Gawain. "Father, why does Duke Tywin suddenly want to adopt me as his goddaughter? Is there something else we don't know about?" Lord Gawain looked at his radiant daughter with loving eyes. "Child, even if Duke Tywin has something, what are you afraid of if you become his daughter? It is a wonderful thing that the Duke is willing to take you as his goddaughter. Moreover, the adoption ceremony will be held in the September of Casterly Rock, with Septons, sisters, Maester Polliver and the knights and lords of Casterly Rock attending. This is the honor of our family, and it is also a sign that our family will rise." "Father, I don't understand." "Haha, my good daughter, think about it, after the ceremony, you will be Duke Tywin's youngest daughter." "Who is Duke Tywin?" "The wealthiest man in the 7 Kingdoms, even the royal treasury of King's Landing owes him millions of gold dragons. And as his daughter, who can be worthy of your marriage in the future except for great noble families like the Duke? Ordinary nobles, who would dare to propose marriage? Since you are his daughter, he will not watch you unable to marry." "Ha ha, ha ha ha, my dear daughter, the prosperity of our family in the future will depend entirely on you." Chapter 42. "Father, I would like to go back, may I?" Jenny, a noble lady who had been carefully cultivated, would not use a definite phrase like "I want to go back" when speaking to her father, but rather the gentle "I would like to go back." Her true intention was to go back, not just wanting to go back. To revitalize the family, Earl Gavin had painstakingly cultivated Jenny for more than 10 years, and now it was time for his daughter to repay him. Hearing his daughter say "I would like to go back," the smile on Gavin's face gradually stiffened, and finally, his expression became very unpleasant. His daughter Jenny was Gavin's hope for reviving the family's glory. Why? Jenny was not only beautiful and well-mannered, but also naturally intelligent. She could see things that her father couldn't see, or chose to ignore, and she could see them more clearly. After thinking it over, she believed that Duke Tywin's sudden adoption of her would definitely not be a good thing. If Duke Tywin sincerely wanted to adopt me, why didn't he invite my mother to the adoption ceremony? Jenny said softly, lowering her head slightly, not daring to look her father in the eyes. Earl Gavin was so angry that he felt a tightness in his chest and a pain in his heart. Earl Gavin's wife was named Cybele Spicer. Cybele's grandfather was a merchant, and her grandmother was the Toad Witch of Lanny Sport. In the TV series, young Cersei and two noble girls went to consult the Toad Witch about their future. One girl was so scared that she ran away, and the other trembled, but Cersei was not afraid. She threatened the witch that if she didn't tell her the prophecy, she would deal with her. That witch was Cybele's grandmother, Jenny's maternal grandmother. Back then, Earl Gavin was in decline and faced many difficulties. In order to maintain the so-called honor of a great noble family, he was unwilling to reduce the number of servants and expenses. Because he coveted the rich dowry of Cybele's merchant father, he married Cybele, who was not a noble, which became a joke among the Westerland's nobles at that time. Tywin's younger brother Kevin refused Earl Gavin's marriage proposal, not entirely because of Gavin's poverty. Part of the reason came from Cybele, because Cybele's bloodline was not noble. This was a marriage that Earl Gavin later regretted very much, but because of his poverty, he was unable to cancel the engagement. He could not afford to pay back the dowry of the Cybele family. If he didn't divorce, the noble honor of the family would already be stained. If he divorced, he would not only be unable to return the dowry, but also damage the ancient honor of the Westerling family. According to the rules, even if a commoner's daughter was adopted, the daughter's parents had the right to enter the sacred hall for the ceremony, kneel in front of the statues of the 7 gods, anoint themselves with holy oil, pray to the 7 gods, and receive blessings from relatives and friends. However, Duke Tywin explicitly stated in his letter that he did not want to see Lady Cybele in the September of the Rock. Earl Gavin turned a blind eye to Duke Tywin's unreasonable request. He happily had his daughter Jenny dressed up and went with him to Casterly Rock. In order to be as worthy as possible of the family's noble status, he used a 4-horse carriage, 8 guards, and 2 coachmen. As for the family's relatives, most of them no longer had any contact. Jenny didn't care about the blessings of other relatives and friends, but she hoped that her mother could be respected by Tywin. However, Tywin did not respect Cybele, which made Jenny feel a sense of humiliation that was difficult to erase. Not long after leaving the house, she finally mustered the courage to suggest to her father that Duke Tywin did not respect the Westerling family, so she wanted to go back. This made Earl Gavin's face turn pale and his heart ache. Earl Gavin spent a long time calming the various feelings in his heart. He said softly, "All right, let's go back." Jenny was overjoyed. The gloomy expression on her face was swept away. Overjoyed, she wanted to put her arms around her father's neck and kiss him on the face, just like when she was a child. However, she sat upright and didn't move. She knew that her father wouldn't like her presumptuousness. She was a noble lady and couldn't be unrestrained, and needed to maintain her noble elegance. Earl Gavin reached out and lifted the curtain, and said to the family's coachman, "Ayu, hurry up." "Yes, my lord." Clap. Clap. Clap clap. The coachman's whip cracked in the air, and the 4 good horses immediately accelerated, and the carriage ran like the wind. 4 good horses, don't actually whip them. Just cracking the whip in the air will make them understand the master's intention and run. Do not whip the horses. This is also one of the family etiquette taught to the Westerling family's coachman. "Father," Jenny's voice was full of grievance. "Jenny, if we get to Casterly Rock faster, we can complete the adoption ceremony faster, and then we can go home faster." The next day, at dusk, on the official road north of Casterly Rock, a huge knight on a tall horse blocked the road, surrounded by more than 20 cavalrymen. Apart from a guy with a constant smile on his face and a petite female cavalryman, the rest of the cavalrymen were either fierce-looking or had lewd and evil auras on their faces. Earl Gavin's carriage was forced to stop. The 8 guards protecting the carriage on both sides changed their expressions. Blocking their way was Sir Gregor Clegane, known as the Mountain, a notorious figure in the Westerlands. "My lord, the Mountain is blocking the way," a guard whispered to Earl Gavin through the curtain. Inside the curtain, Earl Gavin and Jenny both shook. The Mountain was Duke Tywin's mad dog, crude and despicable, with a low character. Those who followed him were all vicious people, and the Mountain had a reputation for defiling noble women. Earl Gavin lifted the curtain, got out of the carriage, stood on the carriage, and raised his voice, "Lord Gregor, Gavin Westerling greets you." Gregor's voice was as loud as a bell, like thunder. "Oh! Earl Gavin, is your daughter, Miss Jenny, in the carriage?" Gavin's face changed. On both sides of the carriage, the 8 cavalry guards immediately stepped forward and stood in front of the carriage. "Sir Gregor, Duke Tywin wrote a letter respectfully inviting us to Casterly Rock. He will adopt my daughter Jenny as his adopted daughter." Gregor grunted. The 20 or so cavalrymen around him suddenly charged, with their spears attacking. They were too close, and it happened so suddenly that Earl Gavin's guards didn't even have time to draw their swords before they were pinned in the chest, throat, face, and abdomen by the spears. Earl Gavin and the 8 guards were subdued in an instant, not daring to move rashly. Gregor and his men were known for their tyranny, but it was rare for them to be so arrogant towards nobles with the status of earls. Earl Gavin was dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. "Earl Gavin, tell your guards and coachmen to get out of here!" Gregor shouted, his voice as loud as a bell, making Earl Gavin's eardrums ache faintly. Earl Gavin's face turned pale and then white. He raised his hand to signal, and the 8 guards retreated with miserable expressions, all the way to the back of the carriage. The 2 coachmen hurriedly jumped out of the carriage and stood tremblingly on the side of the road. Gregor's cavalrymen, like wolves and tigers, immediately guarded the carriage from all sides. The smiling knight beside Gregor was none other than Rafford Clegane, known as Sweet Mouth. He chuckled, took a large package from the horse's back, and jumped down, striding to the side of the carriage. He opened the package and took out a shiny copper basin and 2 bulging leather bags. The young female cavalryman beside Gregor was his adopted daughter, Julie Clegane. She jumped off her horse, nimbly came to Rafford, squatted down, reached out and opened one of the leather bags, and poured the clear spring water from the leather bag into the copper basin. Earl Gavin stared blankly at the smiling Rafford and the agile Julie, wondering what these lawless dogs were going to do. Chapter 43. A snow-white towel was placed into a copper basin filled with half a basin of water. "Sir Jovan, please step out of the carriage," Julie said. Jovan's face flushed red. He saw the 3 dog sigil on the girl's armor, and also on Sweet Mouth Ralph's armor. Why did these 2 have the Clegane family's sigil? Weren't the Clegane's cavalrymen Lord Tywin's family soldiers? When did the Mountain acquire family cavalry? Can he even afford them? But now was not the time to figure out these unimportant questions. Lord Jovan had to jump out of the carriage. He was very grateful that the Mountain was riding far away and didn't come over. He was afraid that the Mountain would see Jane's beauty and do something unbefitting of proper etiquette. "My lady, what are you going to do?" Jovan asked politely in a soft voice. "Lord Earl, we are under orders from Lord Tywin to come 10 miles outside the city to greet the Earl and Lady Jane, and under orders from Sir Gregor to wash away the dust of the road for Lady Jane." Julie was quick-witted. As she spoke, she lifted the curtain, carried the copper basin into the carriage, and jumped in herself. The curtain fell, swaying gently. After a while, the voices of Jane and Julie talking, and the sound of water, came from inside the carriage. Next to the carriage, a smiling Ralph took out a woman's silver mirror, rouge, powder, and eyeliner pencil from a large package. Looking at the patterns and ornaments on these items, they were all high-end goods used by the great nobles. Earl Jovan was mediocre in martial arts, but he was knowledgeable about the things used by nobles. He could see that these things were basically exquisite goods sent over by trading ships from across the narrow sea, and were very valuable. Earl Jovan's mood miraculously improved. This fully proved Lord Tywin's importance to Jane, and it was also an emphasis on the Westerling family. Lord Tywin was so considerate. He was afraid that Jane's complexion would be bad after travelling for 2 days, and it would be inconvenient to put on makeup and touch up, so he sent soldiers to greet her 10 miles outside the city, and even sent female soldiers to serve Jane in dressing up, and then enter the city beautifully. Jane was beautiful and virtuous, and her radiant beauty would allow the people to see her dignity and grace after entering the city, which would also bring glory to Lord Tywin's honor. Sir Gregor, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you before, Earl Jovan said with a softened expression, apologizing to Gregor. Gregor was about the same age as Sir Jovan. He looked relaxed and ignored Earl Jovan's polite remarks. Gregor's rudeness and impoliteness were also well known throughout the Seven Kingdoms. Earl Jovan valued his status, and although he felt quite embarrassed, he didn't bother to argue with the infamous Mountain. However, the current Gregor disdained to pay attention to Earl Jovan because he looked down from the bottom of his heart on the hypocritical, pretentious, affected, artificial, sanctimonious, and selfish Earl Jovan, who was willing to sell off his ancestral territory for vain fame and showmanship. His daughter Jane was not his daughter at all, but his most valuable commodity with Sibel. He racked his brains to sell Jane for a good price. As for the daughter's own feelings, future, and happiness, he completely disregarded them. In Earl Jovan's eyes, the Mountain was a vulgar and unbearable scumbag. In the eyes of the current, different Mountain, Earl Jovan was just a wastrel scumbag who was neither good at writing nor martial arts. At the same time, the Lannisters' main castle, the dining hall. The dining hall was very large, with a huge long table that could accommodate 200 people at the same time. There were 4 such long tables. Only one exquisite table was provided for the knights to eat at. Tywin Lannister sat upright in front of the dining table decorated with gold and silver carvings, with a snow-white napkin clipped to his chest with a golden lion brooch. When he ate, no servants or family soldiers were allowed to eat in the dining hall at the same time. Tywin liked silence. Only knights with noble status were qualified to dine with him. Tywin's younger brother, Kevan Lannister, sat opposite Tywin, and his maester, Pycelle, sat on the side. In the huge dining hall, there were only 3 people eating. Kevan Lannister's body had already begun to gain weight. His head was completely bald, shaved clean, but there was a circle of thick hair above his ears and on the back of his head, as if he was wearing a golden hair-woven hoop. His chin was square, and his beard was neatly trimmed, very short. When he spoke, the fat on his chin trembled, and his beard was also golden. Sir Kevan was born in 245 AC and was 53 years old this year, 3 years younger than Tywin. He had round shoulders and a thick waist, and his skin was very well maintained. Of the 4 Tywin brothers, only Tywin and Kevan were left. The other 2 brothers had died of illness. Kevan was Tywin's most trusted deputy. His loyalty and reliability were known throughout the 7 Kingdoms, and he had the reputation of being Tywin's shadow. Kevan recognized his elder brother's extraordinary qualities when he was 17 years old. From that time on, he completely obeyed Tywin. Sure enough, Tywin lived up to his brother's expectations, and at the age of 19, he destroyed the rebellious nobles in the west and revitalized the family's prestige. At the age of 20, he became the hand of the king to the Mad King Aerys Targaryen because of his widespread reputation and worked continuously for 20 years. Until he took the initiative to resign. Among the nobles in the west, there was a saying, in front of Tywin, Kevan never expressed a different opinion. In fact, this sentence was not accurate. Tywin discussed many things with Kevan, but in the end, even if Tywin's decision completely violated Kevan's wishes, Kevan would execute it 100%. Try this soup, Tywin gestured to Kevan. Kevan gave his brother and the maester a strange look, then picked up a soup spoon and tasted it. It's still Aldrich's craftsmanship, Kevan said with a smile, as delicious as it used to be. Tywin had no smile, as if he hated Kevan. He clapped his hands. The same golden basin containing the same bacon soup was brought up. Try this, Tywin said again. So Kevan tried this bowl of bacon soup. He slowly drank a spoonful, and his expression gradually became surprised. He looked at Tywin and the maester, and then tasted the soup next to him. Are both of these Aldrich's craftsmanship? Kevan asked with a strange voice. Yes. Are the ingredients exactly the same? Yes. But why does one feel more refreshing and delicious the more you drink it, while the other feels more and more crude and bitter? Tywin was expressionless, glanced at the servant next to him, and the servant immediately brought up 2 exquisite porcelain boxes. Under Tywin's signal, Kevan opened the white jade-carved lid. One box contained the familiar light yellow rock salt, and the other box contained a snow-white substance like fine sand. This is snow salt, Tywin said. Snow salt. The sea salt supplied from across the narrow sea? I heard that a lot of forests have to be cut down to burn the seawater in rows of large iron pots to obtain it. How much does this salt cost per ounce? No money, it can be produced directly by processing rock salt, Tywin said lightly. Oh. Was the snow salt production method discovered by Maester Pycelle? That's great, haha, we can use snow salt to exchange for ironware and good horses with other nobles, and we can also sell it to the other side of the narrow sea to exchange for the exquisite silk and porcelain we want. Maester, you are amazing, you have made a great contribution. Kevin said with great joy. It's not the Maester's credit, it's the mountain. Tywin said in a cold voice. The smile on Kevin's face suddenly froze, his eyes widened, his mouth opened, as if an invisible hand had strangled his throat. He couldn't believe it. How could this be possible? The mountain is just a complete scumbag. Chapter 44. Grandmaster touched his Grandmaster's chain, a dozen or so metal pieces hanging around his neck and swaying gently. He smiled and said, Sir Kevin, you haven't been in the Westerlands recently, so you don't know about the strange and incredible changes that have happened to Sir Gregor. What other, surprising changes has the mountain undergone? Strictly speaking, his changes began about a month ago, triggered by a severe headache. I know, he's always had headaches and needs to drink a lot of poppy milk. Tywin interjected, poppy milk shouldn't be drunk too much. I know that Eddard Stark of the North rarely drinks poppy milk when he's sick or injured. Yes, poppy milk can treat illnesses, help with sleep, and relieve pain, but drinking too much can lead to serious dependence and harm the body, the Grand Master said. So what exactly happened with Gregor's headache? Kevin asked. He fell into a coma and had a high fever, the Grand Master said. I thought he would die, and I had already arranged his funeral. Tywin waved his hand, signaling the servant to take away the bowl of bitter bacon soup. But the mountain is fine now. Kevin said. Yes, he woke up 3 days later, rested and recovered for a few days, and felt like he had changed. He became taciturn, and even when the Duke spoke to him, he didn't pay much attention. Then one day, he suddenly proposed to go back to Clegane's Keep to rest and recuperate. The Duke was afraid that something would happen to him, so he sent Grandmaster Potter to go back with him, along with his 3 loyal subordinate officers. Sweetmouth Ralph, the hangman Dunson, and the sworn brother Polliver, Kevin rattled off. Yes, those 3 accompanied him back, along with Grandmaster Potter, of course. According to Grandmaster Potter, the mountain stopped drinking poppy milk after returning to Clegane's Keep and tied himself to a stone bed to forcibly break his dependence on poppy milk. 2 days later, he got up from the stone bed. Perhaps it was from that time that he suddenly seemed to become enlightened, and he inexplicably became wise. Wise? The mountain? How is that possible? Kevin was unwilling for the Grand Master to use wisdom to beautify the mountain. Tywin interjected, the mountain himself said it was because of the 7 gods. He even hired craftsmen to build a September. He said he received the light of the 7 gods, which suddenly made him understand a lot of knowledge he never knew before. The father is justice, the mother is nurturing, the warrior is battle, the maiden is purity, the smith is craftsmanship, the stranger is death, and only the crone represents wisdom. If he received wisdom and knowledge, then he could only receive the light of the crone, not the light of the 7 gods, Kevin said, expressing his disbelief in the mountain's words. I believe he received the light of the 7 gods, Tywin said. Kevin opened his mouth to speak, but was frozen by Tywin's words. He stammered for a while before saying, all right, I believe what the mountain said about receiving the light of the 7 gods. Don't disbelieve it yet, the mountain also has some very ingenious military inventions, Grandmaster Potter said with a smile, raising his long eyebrows. Military. Let's not talk about the military whistle for now, bring up the noodles, Tywin said. Yes, my lord. The 3 servants waiting on the side immediately brought up the noodles that had been prepared long ago. The noodles were thick, short, and slippery, like loach, quite different from the white noodles of Earth civilization from the transmigrated Gregor the college engineering man. To be precise, they were more like knife-cut noodles. However, these noodles were not knife-cut, but handmade, so they were uneven in size and irregularly shaped. Kevin noticed that the servants placed a flat, carved wooden box about the length of a dagger in front of the Grand Master and Duke Tywin, while his own bowl of noodles, as usual, had a knife and fork. Don't you have knives and forks in your bowls? Kevin's face was full of doubt. According to etiquette, noodles would not be served at this time. Moreover, roast meat, grilled meat, bread, lettuce, honey, fruit, wine, pastries, desserts, etc., were all absent, completely violating the order and rules of serving dishes. "We use the things in the box," the Grand Master said with a smile. Tywin and the Grand Master opened the boxes and took out two small, round stick-like objects. These two strange objects were the same size and length, and were wrapped in bright silver silk, tied in the middle with a red ribbon in a unique butterfly style. Kevin's eyes widened a little. "What are they?" He could even hear his own voice sounding a bit odd. These things were too strange, never seen before. Judging from the exquisite silk packaging, it was probably a new item from the free cities across the narrow sea. "Chopsticks," the Grand Master said. "Invented by the Mountain. These are the chopsticks he carefully made, especially to give to me." Tywin didn't even look up and began to eat the noodles with chopsticks. Kevin's mouth opened again and couldn't close at all. He had lived for 53 years and had never heard of or seen chopsticks. He looked at the knife and fork in his bowl and couldn't help but gently touch the noodle bowl with the knife and fork, making two clinking sounds. The Grand Master also began to eat the noodles with chopsticks. Kevin understood why Duke Tywin didn't serve other meat and vegetables and instead served a bowl of noodles first. It was to show him how to eat noodles with these chopsticks. "Are there any more chopsticks?" "Yes, but don't think this thing is convenient and easy to use for eating noodles. If you use it for the first time, I guarantee you won't be able to hold it steady, you won't be used to it, and you might even drop it on the ground. You would rather use the knife and fork again. But if you persist for a little while and try more, you will quickly master the method of picking up noodles with chopsticks, which is 10 times better than eating noodles with a knife and fork," the Grand Master said with a smile. "It's also very convenient for eating vegetables, especially for picking up vegetables and meat in soup. Because it is made of wood, it is not afraid of high temperatures and will not burn your hands," Tywin said. He raised his head from the bowl and looked at Kevin. "I saw Gregor using chopsticks very conveniently and well, so I decided to try using chopsticks. It was indeed not very smooth at first, and my chopsticks fell on the ground." Kevin was clear in his heart that with Tywin's competitive nature, he must not lose to Gregor, so the Duke quickly mastered the skill of using chopsticks and even liked this new cutlery. "How can you be sure that these chopsticks were invented by the Mountain and not a custom that the Easterners across the narrow sea have had for a long time? The Mountain wouldn't lie to me." Tywin glared at Kevin. "If there were people across the narrow sea producing and using chopsticks, I would have known about it sooner than the Mountain." "Yes, my lord," Kevin said quickly. Duke Tywin's words convinced him of his doubts. He didn't doubt Tywin, he just didn't want to believe the Mountain. Tywin and the Grand Master finished a bowl of noodles very skillfully and quickly with chopsticks, while Sir Kevin only ate a little more than half. Eating noodles with a knife and fork, although accustomed to it, was indeed not as convenient and quick as chopsticks. "From now on, House Lannister will use chopsticks to eat," Tywin said. "This is the wisdom of the Crone's Light. No one in the Seven Kingdoms knows how to use chopsticks, and the royal family won't use them either. Even the noblest and oldest great nobles have never seen or used chopsticks, but House Lannister is an exception." "But how do you cut roast meat with chopsticks?" Kevin discovered a big problem. Gregor never cuts his own roast meat. He has a little adopted daughter named Julie who specializes in cutting roast meat and boiled beast meat chunks for him. The chef can also cut the roast meat in the kitchen first and put it on a plate to serve, Tywin said. "We don't have to cut the meat ourselves." "Yes, my lord." Kevin knew that Tywin must have seen Gregor perform how to eat meat with chopsticks. "House Lannister will lead a new fashion, I believe other nobles will rush to imitate and learn," Grand Master Potter announced in a singing voice. Hearing the words about leading a new fashion, Kevin suddenly understood. No wonder Duke Tywin summoned him back, no wonder Duke Tywin served noodles first today. If it really led other nobles to rush to imitate, the glory and cultural influence that the Westerlands would gain would surpass the other 6 kingdoms, and not just because of gold. And this is exactly what Tywin has always hoped to achieve. By the way, there is also the unique snow salt. For nobles who pay attention to exquisite food, once used, they can no longer abandon snow salt. And snow salt comes from the Westerlands. Chapter 45. 10 miles north of Casterly Rock, along the main road. Julie Clegane helped the travel-worn Jane Westerling wash up, and together with Rafford Clegane, took the driver's seat of Jane's carriage. Gregor Clegane rode alongside on horseback, with the Clegane cavalry following behind. At Gregor's command, the carriage slowly moved forward. The setting sun cast long shadows across the road from the sunset sea. Lord Gawain and his 8 guards watched helplessly as the mountain forcibly hijacked the carriage. Gawain swallowed his anger and had no choice but to follow behind the mountain's cavalry, maintaining a distance. You can't reason with a madman. And the mountain was that madman. Lord Gawain knew very well that even with his 8 guards, they were no match for the mountain alone. The most important thing now was not to protect the carriage, but to avoid angering the mountain while Jane was still safe. Once he met with Lord Tywin, Lord Gawain would demand justice and make the mountain apologize. For the safety and honor of his daughter, Lord Gawain decided to endure. Once Jane became Lord Tywin's daughter, the mountain would be nothing more than a dog forced to serve her, and the Westerling family would rise in prominence, preventing other Westerland's nobles from looking down on them. Lord Gawain gradually smoothed out his inner turmoil, making himself feel less embarrassed and uncomfortable. On the road north of the city, the sound of hooves echoed. Travelers coming and going, seeing the mountain from afar, quickly moved off the road to avoid him. In the Westerlands, don't mess with the mountain. Lady Jane, I am Gregor Clegane, Gregor said from behind the curtain. Jane was already too frightened to speak inside the carriage. But, if she didn't answer the mountain, would he get angry, would he become enraged? If he couldn't help but lift the curtain and see her beauty, would he do something to disgrace her honor, even some teasing, dirty words? Behind the carriage, the Clegane family cavalry's foul language constantly forced its way into Jane's ears, causing her to feel ashamed, blush, and feel embarrassed. Some words were truly unbearable. Mountain. Lord. Jane knew she had made a mistake as soon as she spoke. Mountain was not Gregor Clegane's name, nor was it a title, but a malicious nickname given to Gregor out of fear. It was like you could privately call someone a dog, a pig, a beast, and you could discuss their dog-like or pig-like attributes and bad reputation among a group of people, but you couldn't say it to their face, as that would be an insult. Jane was too nervous, flustered, and for her, who valued etiquette and manners, she could not allow herself to commit such a rude and despicable act. But as soon as she opened her mouth, she stammered it out. In fact, many people, including Miss Julie, the deceased Sir Alan Sherriot, and Gregor's loyal subordinates, had addressed Gregor by his nickname Mountain Lord to his face. Gregor didn't care, he himself didn't care at all. The current Gregor didn't feel it was an insult when anyone called him Mountain to his face. This was perhaps one of the true colors of an evil person. As soon as Jane realized she had said Mountain Lord instead of Sir Gregor, she was scared half to death. Jane was, after all, only a 15-year-old girl who had learned literature, needlework, etiquette, music, painting, medicine, poetry, and the history of the 7 kingdoms, but had never developed the courage to practice martial arts. In the face of a notorious villain like Gregor, she had completely lost her courage. Miss, I'm listening. Gregor rarely spoke again in response, and wasn't angry about being called Mountain to his face. His tone was calm and his voice gentle. Jane took a deep breath, trying to calm her terrified mood. Sir. Gregor, hello, thank you and your soldiers for coming to welcome me. The Westerling family is very grateful, and I myself am very grateful for your care, Sir. Jane felt her heart pounding wildly. She finally finished speaking, and small beads of sweat appeared on her forehead and the tip of her nose, and her 2 snow-white hands felt hot. Lady Jane, Lord Tywin ordered me to come and welcome you. Oh. Thank you for Lord Tywin's generosity. Jane and the Westerling family feel ashamed. Lady Jane, I am deeply honored. I should thank you. Sir Gregor, it is I and the Westerling family who should thank you first. Thank you for coming to welcome and escort me. Jane is terrified and unworthy of such kindness. Lady Jane, the copper basin, spring water, and towel were prepared privately for you by Gregor. The silver mirror, rouge, powder, and eyebrow pencil were the best quality items I bought in Casterly Rock specifically as gifts for you. I am deeply honored that you accepted all the small gifts I carefully prepared. Thank you, Miss. Jane felt a chill in her heart as she listened, and by the end, she was covered in cold sweat. What did the mountain mean by saying this? If she had known they were from him, Jane would not have accepted them. No matter what they were or how high-end they were, she would have refused them all. But now she had accepted them. She had used the mountain's copper basin, spring water, and towel, and she had also used the silver mirror, rouge, powder, and eyebrow pencil. When Julie had happily packed everything up and said that they were gifts carefully selected by the Lord, she had politely accepted them all. She had thought these things were from Lord Tywin. She never would have imagined that these things that only noble ladies would be familiar with were actually gifts bought by the Mountain for her. Thinking of the rumors of the Mountain defiling women, Jane felt a chill all over her body. She wanted to shout for her father, but she knew it was useless. Moreover, the Mountain had not violated any etiquette. She had accepted them because she had mistakenly thought they were from Lord Tywin. If she refused now, it would be her rudeness, not the Mountain's. And, she was afraid of angering the Mountain. Even if the Mountain didn't dare to do anything to her because of Lord Tywin, even if he lifted the curtain and verbally humiliated her, that would be unacceptable. "What's wrong, Lady Jane? Are you feeling unwell? Do you need my help?" The Mountain's voice sounded again. Through the curtain, Jane felt the Mountain's large hand stroking the curtain, as if he was about to lift it open. This made Jane's soul fly away, and she felt as if the Mountain was about to get into the carriage. "No, no. No, I'm fine. Mountain. Sir Gregor, I'm fine, thank you for your gifts. Are you happy to accept my gifts?" The Mountain said again. Jane felt for the first time in her life that speaking was so easy to collapse. She was helpless. She needed her father by her side. But her father couldn't afford to offend the Mountain either, and her father was far behind the carriage. "Yes, I am very happy to accept your gifts." Jane said something that would make her feel sick for a long time. "Oh, that's good. In that case, I can report back to Lord Tywin," the Mountain said casually. This was a very inexplicable sentence. The things the Mountain sent to Jane privately were not Lord Tywin's orders, so why did the Mountain have to report back to Lord Tywin? Only things that Lord Tywin had instructed the Mountain to do did the Mountain need to report back to Lord Tywin. Vaguely, Jane felt that there might be something between the Mountain and Lord Tywin, but what exactly it was, she didn't know, and she couldn't figure it out. Chapter 46. Casterly Rock. Lannister Main Keep. Dining Hall. The meat, vegetables, and bacon soup on the table had been cleared away, leaving only various fruits. "What does raising a small bird require?" Lord Tywin stared intently at Kevin. "Water and millet." Kevin knew that his brother had summoned him back because he must have something for him to do. In front of Kevin was placed a delicate small wooden box, inside which was a pair of chopsticks wrapped in fine silk, tied in the middle with red silk thread. This was a pair of chopsticks that Kevin had not yet learned to use but were very precious. Because they were precious, they were noble. "What about raising a wolf? Give it meat." Conversations like this were not uncommon. But Tywin would repeat them, and Kevin would answer seriously. Tywin hoped that his most loyal and valued younger brother would remember these simple truths. To control complex people and things, the most effective way is the simplest method and the simplest truth. "What about raising a vicious dog? Give it bones." "That's right, so for those who are of great use to you, as long as you give them what they want, they will be used by you and be loyal." "Yes, my lord." "What does Sandor Clegane, the Hound, need most?" "Honor, my lord. So I gave him the opportunity to be Cersei's personal guard in the royal palace. The Queen's Knight, besides the King's Guard, there is no more glorious empty title." "Yes, my lord." "What are your thoughts on the changes in Gregor Clegane?" "Concern, my lord." "Concern about what?" "A vicious dog should not possess human intelligence." Tywin's expression was like iron, even when he was deliberating with only his younger brother, he never smiled. There was not a trace of human warmth in him. He was stone-hearted. Can a vicious dog with wisdom and knowledge surpass the archmaesters in the citadel of Old Town? Absolutely impossible. Will the light of the seven gods forever favor one person? No, my lord. But a vicious dog with wisdom is always unsettling. What do you want to do? I don't know. It's not terrible for a vicious dog to become a little smarter, as long as he is as obedient as before. I'm just afraid the dog will turn into a wolf. Now is a time of peace, a dog can never become a wolf. Even if he accidentally grows into a wolf, he will be a wolf that bites others. The Lannisters are the eternal lions. Yes, my lord. Give this vicious dog what he wants, and he will always be your dog. I understand, my lord. It is indeed dangerous for a vicious dog to become a wolf, but what is truly dangerous is the loss of loyalty. Whether your subordinates are rats, cats, dogs, or wolves, or anything else, loyalty is always the top priority. Once you suspect his loyalty, there is no need to waste time figuring out if you are wrong, just kill him. Better to kill the wrong one than to let one go. Yes, my lord. In fact, Gregor's current strength was pitifully small, not worth Tywin and Kevan's serious discussion, but this was Tywin and Kevan's private style, and also the rule-like habit that Tywin had developed since he took over the Westerlands at the age of 19. Any abnormal people, things, or objects in the Westerlands, regardless of size, the two brothers would close the door and envision the possibilities of the future, and clarify the ways to deal with the deterioration. When Jane Westerling and Gregor Clegane walked into the reception hall together, all the welcoming servants, family soldiers, legion centurions, knights, squires, etc., their eyes lit up. Even beside a giant figure like Gregor, Jane's beauty and radiance still attracted everyone's attention. And Lord Gawain's presence was completely overshadowed by Jane and Gregor. No one noticed his noble attire, even though he entered the hall with Jane and Gregor. He stood next to Jane, and Jane's hand was still holding Lord Gawain's arm. Tywin sat upright on a chair covered with lion skin, his face as hard as iron, stern and imposing. Golden sideburns, a bright bald head, a noble dress woven with gold thread, and the patterns on his boots were also woven with gold thread. There is a folk saying that the trash that Duke Tywin shits out is gold. It's just that the knight who jokingly said this popular saying in front of Tywin is still locked in the black dungeon of Casterly Rock, and he will never see the sun in the sky again in his life. Maester Bert and Sir Kevan stood on either side of Tywin's chair. There were many knights and squires in the hall, but none of them were sitting. Tywin sat, everyone else had to stand. Lord Gawain. Tywin said. Yes, my lord. Lord Gawain hurriedly trotted forward and knelt on one knee to perform the vassal salute. Jane also stepped forward gracefully, knelt on one knee beside her father in full view of everyone, and performed the vassal salute. Tywin remained motionless, accepting Gawain and Jane's greetings. Tywin, who did not smile, made everyone feel suppressed. Gregor stood to Tywin's right, carrying his sword. Was the journey smooth, Lord Gawain? Very smooth, Duke Tywin. Duke Tywin's conversation with Lord Gawain ended here. Jane, you are truly beautiful. Thank you for your praise, my lord. Jane lowered her head slightly, with a smile on her face, and bent her knees slightly, performing a curtsy. Maester, tomorrow, release ravens to declare throughout the Westerlands that I will adopt Jane Westerling as my foster daughter, and order the nobles to rush to Casterly Rock within 3 days. To celebrate, Casterly Rock will celebrate for 3 days, and after 3 days, all the nobles and squires of the Westerlands will come to the September to be anointed with holy oil and participate in my adoption ceremony. Yes, my lord. Lord Gawain was incredulous, his face turning red with excitement. He knew that the gifts from the nobles of the entire Westerlands alone would be enough for House Westerling to reap a great harvest, and there was no need to sell the land at home cheaply to Lord Marbrand. Lord Gawain never expected Duke Tywin to attach so much importance to adopting Jane as his foster daughter, which was a powerful signal for the rise of House Westerling, and also the supreme honor the family had obtained. Jane Westerling could not hide her surprise. The people in the hall also couldn't believe that Tywin was only taking a foster daughter, and there was no need to alarm the entire Westerlands. This was not reasonable or rational. Jane and her family were not so important in the Westerlands. Gregor was clear in his heart that Duke Tywin was going to use this to do a few major things: salt, chopsticks, and military whistles. Gregor looked at Kevan and the Maester, and saw that their expressions were calm and not surprised. He knew he had guessed right. Tywin's adoption of a foster daughter and summoning all his vassals to celebrate was originally a real event that shocked the Westerlands, and there were many people in the hall, but no one cheered, no one complimented, and there was no applause. Only because Tywin did not like these actions. The huge hall was very quiet. If someone was outside the door of the hall, they would think there was no one in the hall at all. Tywin looked at Gregor. He had made a bet with Gregor that if Gregor could get Jane to accept the gift Gregor gave, he would do his best to facilitate the marriage between Jane and Gregor. Of course, there was a prerequisite that Gregor must not force Jane to accept his gift. What gift to buy was a problem. How to give it was a problem. How to make Jane accept it with joy was even more of a problem. This was not simple at all. In fact, with Gregor's notorious reputation, giving gifts was very difficult. Tywin wanted to test whether Gregor's brain was working well after he had become enlightened. Whether it was petty cleverness or great wisdom, it was all strategy. A brave general is just a warrior, a general with both courage and strategy is a talented general. Tywin hoped that Gregor, this dog, could become a talented general under the favor of the 7 gods, instead of a warrior. Gregor said, Lord Tywin, Miss Jane likes the gifts I gave very much and has accepted them all. How did you give them? 10 miles north of the official road, we welcomed Lord Gawain and Miss Jane. I asked my little daughter Julie to do Jane's hair, and then I did her makeup in the carriage. After the makeup was done, my little daughter Julie asked Miss Jane to accept the silver mirror, rouge, powder, and eyeliner, and Miss Jane accepted the gifts with joy. Jane, is that so? Yes, Duke Tywin. Jane smiled, her demeanor elegant, but a bitter taste arose in her mouth. Chapter 47. Tywin's face remained impassive, but his heart stirred. Welcoming guests didn't usually involve a grooming ceremony outside the city. This was another of Sir Gregor's innovations. The gift for Jane, focusing on noble ladies' cosmetics, was perfectly suited to a woman's love of beauty and her psychology. But for Gregor, a boorish brute, to have such delicate thoughts and choose items that women would like required not only thoughtfulness but also insight. Before entering the city, Jane would be groomed and made up, then presented with the gift with the words, "A gift from my lord." Delighted by the exquisite makeup, Jane would have no choice but to accept. Moreover, Gregor used a deception that Jane couldn't voice, a kind of trick. He greeted her in the name of Lord Tywin, so the grooming ceremony and the makeup gift would naturally be seen as arranged by Lord Tywin. In Gregor's own name, he couldn't have given the gift, but in the name of Lord Tywin, Gregor's gesture became acceptable. The brilliance of this trick lay in the fact that Lord Tywin couldn't deny Gregor's deception, because when Julie presented the gift, she only said it was from my lord, without specifying Lord Tywin. The Lord Julie mentioned naturally referred to Lord Gregor. Jane couldn't deny her delight upon receiving the gift either. Her upbringing, family honor, and self-respect wouldn't allow her to reject the good feeling she had when accepting the gift, even after understanding the truth. She believed it was an exquisite and high-end gift from Lord Tywin, but it wasn't. Thus, she had made a hasty judgment but couldn't blame Gregor's deception for her own mistake. A simple gift-giving, a simple trick, but a very successful piece of political maneuvering. The simpler the method, the better the results. Between 2 points, any slightly complex route will be longer than a straight line, and the shortest straight line is also the simplest line segment. This small test raised Tywin's opinion of Gregor by a level. He promoted Gregor from the rank of a brute to that of a general. A true general, not just one with a noble title. Kevin, standing beside Lord Tywin, felt uneasy. How could the Mountain come up with such a simple, seamless, yet ingenious scheme? If the Mountain could handle thorny issues in the clearest and simplest way, was he still the same uncouth Mountain? Indeed, a great sword has no edge, and great skill appears effortless. Gregor's seemingly insignificant gift-giving had this quality. He had bet with Lord Tywin and won. Lord Tywin had also won. He had used a small matter to achieve his goal, to see the Mountain clearly. He was certain that the Mountain who had woken up after suffering from severe headaches and unconsciousness for days was no longer the brute he once was. This didn't make Tywin uneasy. Unlike Sir Kevin, Tywin was extremely strong-willed. Tywin had shown rare military talent at the age of 17. At 20, he became the hand of the king, second only to the king and above all others, managing the kingdom in an orderly manner for 20 years. He never doubted his ability to rule with an iron fist. Among the famous generals of the 7 kingdoms, 2 were the most renowned, John Connington, who had been exiled to the other side of the narrow sea, and Randall Tarley, under the command of Tyrell in the Reach. Both military geniuses were far more capable than their masters, yet their masters remained their masters, and always would be. Besides, Gregor was still far behind in many aspects. The enlightened Gregor still needed training and growth. Of course, if Gregor disobeyed, he would be eliminated. The reigns of Castamere continued to be sung throughout the 7 kingdoms and had even spread to the free cities across the narrow sea. When Jane said, "Yes, my lord," Gregor was completely relieved. Knowing Tywin's character of honoring his bets and keeping his word, Gregor knew that the only thing he needed to do next was to wash the bedding, make the bed, and wait for the beautiful Jane to obediently get into bed. The transmigrated Gregor had married Jane Westerling, who was originally supposed to marry Robb Stark. So, when the War of the 5 Kings began, would the Red Wedding that led to the Stark family's great defeat still occur? Gregor didn't know, and he didn't care about things that couldn't be determined in the future. Although, that butterfly had spread its wings and inadvertently flapped them in the air. Night. Lord Tywin's bedroom. My lord, Earl Gawain seeks an audience, Maester Potter said. Standing by the window, Earl Tywin looked at the stone tower opposite. The stone tower had 7 floors, containing the meaning of the faith of the 7. The tower was brightly lit, where the guests resided. Decline. Yes, my lord. Maester Potter walked lightly out of Lord Tywin's bedroom and gently closed the door. He walked down a total of 7 steps. 7 corresponded to the faith of the 7, the most auspicious number in Westeros. Maester Potter was full of apologies to Earl Gawain, who was standing at the bottom of the steps. Earl, I'm very sorry, Lord Tywin has already retired for the night. Asleep? Yes. Oh, I'm truly disturbing you, Maester. I apologize, good night. Earl, would you like me to convey your matter to my lord first thing in the morning? If so, you can tell me now what you are looking for Lord Tywin for. Oh, I just came to wish Lord Tywin good night. Really? Oh, that's unfortunate, my lord has already retired. Yes, yes, yes. Earl Gawain repeatedly agreed. Maester Potter didn't believe that Earl Gawain had only come to wish Lord Tywin good night, but since that's what the other party said, he believed it. Earl Gawain's purpose in coming was first to express gratitude, second to complain about Gregor's rudeness when welcoming them in the evening, and third to wish him good night. He didn't expect Lord Tywin to retire so early. My lord, Lord Gregor seeks an audience. Tell him to come in. Yes, my lord. Gregor walked up the 7 steps, pushed open the door, and entered Lord Tywin's bedroom. He glanced at the maester beside him. Tywin understood and nodded to the maester. The maester said good night and tiptoed out of the room. What is it? My lord, in 3 days, Jane will become your daughter. The great and small nobles of the Westerlands will come to congratulate her. Jane will receive many gifts. I've recently been raising a family cavalry, and I'm very short of money. I request that you give me half of Jane's gifts. Tywin knew that this vicious dog wouldn't say anything good, but he really didn't expect Gregor to shamelessly ask for money. Tywin's face was stern. Gregor was more shameless than before. The former Gregor at least valued some useless honor. Jane will indeed receive many gifts, but it is her right to give them to whomever she wants and not give them to whomever she doesn't want. Are you asking me to order Jane to give you half of her gifts? I'm her husband and have the right to half of her gifts. If I don't take them, Earl Gawain will take all of her gifts. This is very unfair to me. Tywin's sharp gaze stared at Gregor, and Gregor fearlessly looked at Tywin with his shamelessness. You are not her husband yet. Gregor said, all right, I admit that I'm not Jane's husband yet, so please, my lord, look at me as your future son-in-law, and for the sake of the snow salt, military whistles, and chopsticks, lend me 100 gold dragons. 100 gold dragons was already a huge sum, equivalent to 1 million RMB in Earth's civilization. Gregor was consistently shameless. He had borrowed money from Lord Tywin and never paid it back once. His skin was also very thick. He never felt ashamed to borrow money, as if he had already paid off his debts and was justifiably confident. In the past, he would borrow no more than 10 gold dragons, but this time he wanted 100. This was too much. Your reward for the snow salt, military whistles, and chopsticks is Jane. This is what you firmly demanded yourself. I will adopt Jane and then marry her to you, but I won't give you another gold dragon. If you don't lend me money, then I'll have to find a way myself. If there are any small troubles at that time, I'm already your son-in-law. You can't punish me for tarnishing your honor. I need money to support my family's soldiers, raise a wife from a noble family, and protect my territory and people. I will never allow what happened to my adopted daughter Julie, who was forcibly taken up the mountain and raped by the Charlotte family, to happen again, Gregor said. Tywin immediately became alert. All of this vicious dog's words were pretexts. After going in a circle, he had thought of another way to deceive and swindle. He even dared to use roguelike rhetoric on him. If it was really just a little trouble, this guy would have solved it himself. All right, let's see what tricks this vicious dog can play. Tywin's competitive spirit was aroused. Tywin was very competitive. Once, King Aerys Targaryen defied Tywin, and he resolutely resigned from the position of Hand of the King, which he had held for 20 years. No cheating, no coercion, no extortion, no running usurious loans. I support you in finding your own way to make money. Do business, take on mercenary jobs, maintain order at Lannisport docks, do whatever you want. If anything goes wrong, solve it yourself, but absolutely do not let it affect my honor. Gregor hesitated. He was silent for a long time and said, "Yes, my lord." Gregor has remembered it well. Tywin watched Gregor walk out. He was already accustomed to Gregor's shamelessness, rascality, and fearlessness, but this time, what did Gregor want to do? In Lord Tywin's cold and ruthless pale green eyes, there was 3 parts vigilance, 3 parts scrutiny, 3 parts iron blood, and 1 part anticipation. Gregor breathed a sigh of relief as he walked out of Lord Tywin's room. The greeting had been given, and he had received the Duke's support, so it was time to start. Chapter 48. 3 days later, Casterly Rock was bustling with activity, and the September of the Seven was packed with people. All the nobles of the Westerlands had arrived. It was an unprecedented spectacle. The Westerlands had only seen such a lively scene during Cersei's wedding and the tourney at Lanny Sport. Lord Gawain was standing beside Duke Tywin, extremely excited, feeling like he was floating on air. Among the hundreds of noble families in the Westerlands, with honor and status, apart from Duke Tywin, it was his Westerling family. The High Septon held the 7-pointed star, chanting prayers in a loud voice. Another Septon was in front of the maiden statue, applying holy oil to Jane Westerling's hair, brow, and the back of her hands. Some of the great nobles chose the father, some chose the mother, the young nobles chose the warrior, the maidens all chose the maiden, some nobles chose the smith, the elderly nobles chose the crone, and no one chose the stranger, who represented death. Sir Gregor chose the crone, and several nobles were already lined up. Gregor, without any courtesy, displaying the mountain spirit of shamelessness and disregard for life, strode forward. The priests maintaining order dared not step forward to stop him. He stretched out his giant hand and gently pushed aside several nobles, placing himself at the front of the line. Sweetmouth Ralph of Clegane, beaming, was completely renewed, proudly wearing a 3-dog golden badge on his collar. He accompanied Gregor with humble smiles, even more shamelessly following the mountain and standing second in line. After being knighted by Gregor, he barely qualified to enter such an occasion. This made several earls behind him feel humiliated. They dared not scold Gregor, but scolding Gregor's dog was a different matter. A mere knight was several ranks below an earl. Just as several nobles were so emotionally charged that they were about to attack Ralph directly, Gregor pulled Ralph in front of him, and the holy oil from the High Septon landed directly on Ralph's forehead. Then, the acolyte's prayer began. The knights were in an uproar. But it was already irreversible. So, they all chose to leave, unwilling to have holy oil applied and receive blessings in front of the crone statue. Some went to choose the father, and some chose the mother. To avoid disturbing the rituals in other places, low curses were constantly heard, just enough for Ralph to hear. But no one dared to curse Gregor. He was a madman, a demon, a violent maniac, and a beast. Several brave knights were not afraid of Gregor, but due to today's grand ceremony, they had to swallow their anger and choose other statues for the holy oil ritual. Gregor did not have the sense of honor of a knight, they did. Ralph and Gregor were relaxed and natural, not feeling ashamed of their despicable behavior. For shameless people, shamelessness itself is their honor. Jane completed the holy oil ritual, received the blessings of 2 High Septons, and a choir sang a prayer song for Jane. The harp played sacred and solemn music, and the sound of the harp and the songs flew beautifully in the September. The nobles who had received the holy oil ritual walked on the thick carpet, slowly queuing along the winding corridor, heading towards Tywin, who was sitting on a lion-haired chair. In front of Tywin stood his daughter Jane, who had already been baptized. The nobles, regardless of age or gender, moved forward one by one, holding congratulatory gifts in their hands. Some were jade statues, some were silk fabrics, some were artistic weapons, some were expensive rouge, some were pearls and agates, and some were gold, silver, and jade. Rubies and sapphires shone brightly, and emeralds and moonstones competed for beauty. On Jane's right side stood her father, her biological father, Lord Gawain. Duke Tywin was dressed in brocade, majestic as a god, his face without a smile, as cold as ice. But Lord Gawain seemed drunk, his face flushed, his breathing rapid, his face full of smiles, and even veins appeared on his neck. Gregor and Ralph also stood in the line. Gregor was a head taller than everyone else, and the nobles in front of and behind him felt the pressure of a ferocious beast approaching. Jane was carefully dressed, covered in precious jewels. Whether it was her headdress, earrings, necklace, bracelet, ring, chest ornament, or belt, all were exquisite and valuable. Combined with her brocade and gorgeous clothes, she was as beautiful as a fairy, making it impossible to look directly at her. In both his past and present lives, Gregor was seeing such a noble, elegant, and extraordinary classical beauty for the first time. He was mesmerized and lost in thought. In front of and behind Jane, several servants were busy collecting gifts. More than a dozen exquisite rattan baskets for holding gifts were lined up in a row. The officer in charge of announcing the gifts spoke clearly and accurately, announcing each noble's name, title, status, and residence castle, as well as the gift they presented. This was actually a remarkable skill. Lord Gahan kept saying thank you, while Duke Tywin remained silent. The guests first paid their respects to Duke Tywin, and then presented gifts to Jane. Duke Tywin generally nodded in acknowledgement, and shaking hands with those of higher status was already his thanks. Throughout the gift-giving ceremony, only the head of House Marbrand of Ashmark, the head of House Lefford of the Golden Tooth, the head of House Farman of Fair Isle, the head of House Crakehall of Crakehall, the head of House Lannister of Lannisport, the head of House Swift of Cornfield, and the heir of House Sarwick of Silverhill had the opportunity to say a few words to Duke Tywin. When it was Gregor's turn to present a gift on behalf of House Clegane, he became the focus of everyone's attention. People saw that his gift box was almost empty. Many earls were standing aside, waiting to see him make a fool of himself. Under the loud voice of the officer who sang the gifts, which everyone in the audience could hear, the gift announcement itself was a kind of on-site comparison and Vanity Fair. Gregor first paid his respects to Duke Tywin, then lifted the red cloth of his brocade box. In the large gift box was a small brocade box tied with red silk, a palm-sized small package wrapped in brocade silk of unknown content, and a small silver gadget that no one had ever seen. The gadget was strung with a small rope woven from a mixture of gold and silver threads and noble silk threads, small and exquisite, looking like the number 6 or 9. When the gift-announcing officer sang out chopsticks, snow salt, and golden whistle, the audience gradually quieted down. Great and small nobles had never heard of chopsticks, snow salt, and golden whistles, nor had they seen these things. Everyone was surprised and uncertain, exchanging questioning glances and whispering inquiries. No one dared to laugh at Gregor or deliberately provoke him any longer, in case Gregor's gifts were very precious, but they did not know it, which would reveal their ignorance and stupidity. Jane and her father, Lord Gahan, had also never heard of chopsticks, snow salt, and golden whistles. They did not recognize these things, had never heard of them, and did not know how to use them or whether they were precious. The officer sang loudly, "Chopsticks are a noble utensil invented by Sir Gregor Clegane with the blessing of the 7 gods, who has been granted wisdom and inspiration. They are 10 times more useful than knives and forks in certain aspects of dining. Chopsticks have already received high praise from Lord Tywin and Maester Pycelle. The noble lords of the Westerlands will have the opportunity to receive chopsticks from Duke Tywin today. During the feast, Duke Tywin will personally demonstrate how to use chopsticks." The audience was silent. Jane looked at the beast in front of her in disbelief. Gregor's eyes were on Jane's face. Jane looked up at him, and Gregor winked his right eye slightly. Jane quickly lowered her gaze, her pretty face blushing, incomparably beautiful. Chapter 49. Casterly Rock, the temple square was bustling with activity. Long tables filled the vast square, laden with freshly baked bread, glistening roasted meats, sparkling clean fruits, steaming bacon soup, seasoned golden honey, various tender green lettuces, pork ham, wild game jerky. "Hi, Sir Fool," Gregor clapped Adam Marbrand on the shoulder affectionately, "what are your eyes doing glued to Jane Westerling?" The family knights beside Adam Marbrand stood up with a whoosh, 2 knights separating Adam and Gregor, glaring at Gregor. Another 5 knights guarded Adam from the left and right. Adam Marbrand glanced at Lord Tywin, who was seated high above, and said calmly, "The Mountain, I have already proposed to Lord Gahan and received a return gift." Mountain was the infamous nickname people privately used for Gregor. No sir or knight would address Gregor like that in person, because it was rude, a provocative humiliation that would provoke Gregor's rage. But on this occasion, Adam sized up the situation and showed no fear of the Mountain. Since the Mountain had come up to provoke him with alcohol on his breath, calling him Sir Fool, he naturally returned the favor by calling Gregor Mountain. Adam directly called him Mountain, without the prefix of Sir, which was even more impolite. Because Adam triumphantly flaunted that he had already proposed to Lord Gahan, Gregor then noticed that Adam had a chest decoration pinned to his left breast. Chest decorations were common. Nobles who paid attention to detail had hat ornaments, chest ornaments, belt ornaments, and boot ornaments, but this chest ornament was different. It had the Westerling family crest embroidered on it, 6 white seashells. Lord Gawain agreed. Gregor laughed. Lord Gawain agreed, and Miss Jane knows it too. She didn't object. Adam looked at Jane Westerling, who radiated light like the moon. She sat upright beside Lord Tywin, her eyes also happened to look over here, and she turned her head away after their eyes met. Gregor could see the affection in their eyes. A talented man and a beautiful woman, Adam's handsome appearance was worthy of Jane. Sir Fool, I remember Lord Gawain once proposed to your father, Lord Tytos, but was rejected by your father and mother. Her family is too poor, her mother is the daughter of a merchant, not a noble. Did your parents agree to your unauthorized proposal this time? Mountain, the former Jane was not Lord Tywin's daughter, but she is now. When I marry Lord Tywin's daughter, I will be Lord Tywin's son-in-law. Mountain, you are just a dog of Lord Tywin's family. Do you think the Marbrand family will let you off? Adam Marbrand smiled. He was happy to see emotion flicker in Gregor's eyes. Oh, since you speak with such certainty, let's make a bet. Gregor finished his drink in one gulp, appearing unsteady. Adam knew his words had pierced Gregor's heart like knives. Bet with you? You are not worthy. Adam said lightly. He hoped to see Gregor provoked by him and then take action at this banquet. He had already seen clearly that Gregor only had one dog here, and that was the guy called Raff the Sweetling. That dog was only qualified to sit at the outermost table and eat and drink because Gregor had granted him knighthood. Adam had 7 family knights around him, all of whom were strong, and they carried daggers. Their purpose was to prevent Gregor's provocations after they had formed a feud. But the Mountain at the banquet had no armor protection and was also staggering from drinking. As long as Gregor made the first move, it would be done. Starting a fight at Miss Jane's celebration banquet, as long as Gregor dared to make the first move, the responsibility for the win or loss would be Gregor's. No matter how fierce a person was, flesh and blood could not withstand the sharpness of swords. Of course, this was also very dangerous. An enraged Gregor might kill him with one punch. So as soon as Gregor came over, Adam's knights protected Adam, with 2 strong knights separating the two. The Marbrand family knights had all sworn to repay the Marbrand family with their lives. In this world, knights were the best warriors not to provoke. They were highly skilled in martial arts, and the key was that they were not afraid of death. Many people feared the Mountain, but for real knights, there were quite a few who did not fear him. Adam, do you want to avenge your brother Alvar? We will. Then let's make a bet. I will also propose to Lord Gawain. Let's see who Jane Westerling chooses in the end. What nonsense are you talking about? Adam's eyebrows furrowed together, his eyes sharp and provocative. I will also propose to Lord Gawain, betting that Jane will marry me and not you. Do you dare to bet? Adam looked at the Mountain, his mouth gradually turning into a big O shape, and laughter burst out from his mouth. His 7 family knights had already burst into laughter. With hundreds of people at the banquet, there was laughter everywhere, and the laughter here was not surprising, but it still attracted the attention of Lord Tywin, who was seated high above. Among the great lords of the Westerlands, apart from the heir Adam Marbrand, who had not received the honour of sitting with Lord Tywin, the others, including Lord Marbrand of Ashmark, Lord Lefford of the Golden Tooth, Lord Farman of Fair Isle, Lord Craighall of Craighall, Lord Lannister of Lanny Sport, and Lord Swift of Cornfield, all sat with Lord Tywin and received gifts of chopsticks, snow salt and military whistles. These items would be promoted by administrative order tomorrow after the banquet. Chopsticks were exclusively for nobles, military whistles were military secrets, and snow salt would be the representative commodity of the Westerlands to be promoted throughout the continent. The mineral salt business delegated to the various families would be taken back by Lord Tywin. The status of the Marbrand family of Silverhill was enough to receive the honour of sitting with Lord Tywin, but not this time. There were 2 reasons. First, Adam Marbrand was not the Lord of Silverhill, but only the heir, lacking the rank of nobility. Second, the last time the Marbrand family clashed with Gregor, the Marbrand family's behaviour of beating the dog without looking at the owner displeased Tywin. Tywin's sharp, knife-like gaze looked over here, then turned away. He remembered what Gregor had said when he borrowed money from him. Gregor said he would find a way to make money. Lord Tywin took this to heart. He knew very well that Gregor could not afford the salaries of 63 cavalrymen. Among all the troop types, cavalry was the most expensive, and in peacetime, the salaries Gregor gave were 3 times that of ordinary cavalry in other families. With Gregor spending money like this, even a mountain of gold would be spent. Lord Tywin was sensitive to the fact that Gregor would not stand together with Adam Marbrand and laugh for no reason. What are the stakes? Mountain. Adam laughed, almost choking. Does he have any stakes? One of the knights couldn't stop laughing. You name the stakes. Gregor was also laughing like a big fool. His drunkenness, emotional fluctuations, and provocative words were all a routine. A routine, from the influence of Earth's civilization. Both sides felt extremely happy. If I win, I want your cavalry, Clegane lands and castle, and your little adopted daughter Jory Clegane. Most importantly, the Clegane family can never use the motto unmatched again. Adam laughed. Mountain, do you dare to bet? In fact, losing these things would not force the mountain into a dead end, but he would have to return to Tywin's cavalry camp and be a real family dog. Okay. I bet. Swear it. In whose name do you want me to swear? The father. The father governs judgment and balance. Okay, I, Gregor Clegane, swear in the name of the father and the honor of the Clegane family, I bet with Adam Marbrand, we will both propose to Lord Gawain, if Jane does not marry me, Gregor, my cavalry, Clegane lands and castle, and little adopted daughter Jory Clegane, the family motto unmatched, will all be lost to Adam Marbrand. Adam Marbrand laughed and poured Gregor wine from arbor. Mountain, drink, I salute you as a fool. Gregor ignored the humiliation and drank the wine in one gulp. Sir fool, it's your turn to swear. If I win, I don't want anything, just a small marginal piece of land on the westernmost side of the Silver Hills, Gold Leaf Bay. Chapter 50. Tywin's table was very quiet. The other long tables were all far away from Duke Tywin's table. There were 11 people at the table. Duke Tywin sat alone at the head of the table. To his right were 5 people, the first being Jane, the second being Earl Gavin, then, in order, Earl Marbrand of the Cleets, Earl Lefford of the Golden Tooth, and Earl Farman of Fair Isle. To Duke Tywin's left were also 5 people, the first being Earl Kevin, the second being Grand Master Pycelle. Then, in order, Earl Craighall of Craighall, Earl Lannister of Lannisport, and Earl Swift of Cornfield. Earl Gavin was eating such tender roasted meat for the first time, and drinking such refreshing bacon soup. His family was on the verge of bankruptcy, but he was still very particular about food. For Jane, who was already accustomed to exquisite food, every dish today was very delicious. Earl Gavin had drunk a little too much wine, and his courage grew. Your Grace, is snow salt used in these dishes? Yes. Duke Tywin was always a man of few words. Snow salt, really Sir Gregor? Before Gavin could finish speaking, the Duke interrupted him decisively. Yes. Although Earl Gavin showed a relieved expression, he still didn't want to believe it at all in his heart. Jane Westerling also didn't want to, and couldn't believe it. Although when presenting the gifts, the herald accurately announced that the snow salt came from Clegane's keep and was unintentionally produced by Sir Gregor Clegane, and then at this dinner table, her doubts were once again confirmed by Duke Tywin, she still found it hard to believe that the mountain possessed the technology to produce snow salt. Earl Marbrand said softly, Your Grace, I have never drunk such delicious bacon soup. Sir Gregor's production of snow salt is really remarkable. The other earls nodded vigorously, but no one echoed him, even though they sincerely believed so. Duke Tywin didn't like people who flattered and echoed others, which led to a depressing and dull atmosphere at the dinner table. Having been accustomed to eating salt with bitterness and small mud and sand, the huge difference was immediately apparent when tasting this white and fine salt for the first time. The roasted suckling pig tasted completely different with the 2 types of salt. The purity of the snow salt seemed to make the meat more tender. But the enjoyment of snow salt was limited to Duke Tywin's table. There were 11 people at the table, and each of them used chopsticks. Under Duke Tywin's demonstration, the other 10 people at the table learned to use chopsticks. This was indeed a bit difficult at first, because facing these 2 sticks, they didn't know how to hold them or even distinguish the ends. The dishes on this table were also very special. The roast meat master was setting up a fire to make roast meat on the street below the square, and the baker was baking bread next to him. All kinds of dishes were made on the spot by the chefs, and then served steaming hot and fragrant. Once the meat was roasted, 2 chefs with excellent knife skills were responsible for cutting various sizes of roasted meat slices for the noble lords at Duke Tywin's table, putting them on plates and serving them, and everyone would eat them with chopsticks. In this way, the meat and bread on the Duke's table didn't need to be cut by everyone themselves. This made Jane feel great. Ladies often get their fingers and gorgeous clothes dirty when cutting steaming, oily roasted meat. Duke Tywin thought that Gregor was very accurate when he demonstrated how to use chopsticks. Let the chefs cut the roasted meat and bread, tell the chefs what style you like, and then eat it with chopsticks, without having to cut the meat and bread yourself and get greasy or covered in bread crumbs. This is also more convenient for elderly people, young children, and elegant and noble ladies, and it is more in line with the identity of nobles. The full bacon soup was cooked with a lot of ham, carrots, and various vegetables. Only poor people would cut the meat and vegetables into small pieces and cook them into a thick soup, making it easy to drink with a spoon. But nobles don't need to do this. Large chunks of meat, long carrots, and various vegetables can be put in. Using chopsticks to pick vegetables from the soup is several times more convenient than knives and forks. Moreover, there is no need to worry about the bacon soup being steaming hot and scalding, especially if children learn to use chopsticks. It is more convenient and safe. In Gregor's Hwa civilization society, chopsticks have been used for thousands of years and have not been eliminated by other tableware, precisely because of the convenience and practicality of chopsticks. As a Hwa university dog, Gregor knew that there are actually many complex and diverse types of chopsticks. In Hwa civilization, materials such as bamboo, wood, bone, porcelain, ivory, gold, silver, and plastic can be used to make chopsticks. Chopsticks are one of the most commonly used tableware in the world and one of the symbols of Hwa's food culture. Invented in Hwa, it was later spread to many countries in Asia and influenced the overseas food culture structure. Jane quickly learned to use chopsticks. She was versatile, musical, artistic, and also skilled in medicine. Her hands and feet were always nimble. She secretly looked at the mountain. Did that villain invent chopsticks? Invent the whistle? Produce snow salt? Is it possible? Absolutely impossible. But Duke Tywin's honor is beyond doubt. This made Jane feel quite awkward. She was a self-important woman with intelligence and talent, and she deeply hated Gregor. She had subtly inquired with the Grand Master, and Grand Master Pycelle clearly told her that Gregor was indeed illiterate. Does an ignorant fellow who can't read have such high intelligence? Can he invent new things that have never existed in this world? If that's true, then it can only be attributed to the holy light of the seven gods. A scumbag favored by the seven gods? Jane felt this was so twisted. The lady elegantly enjoyed the food while thinking about her daughter's thoughts. In the Westerlands, there are 4 wealthy top noble families: the Leford family of the Golden Tooth, who are wealthy because of gold mines, the Sarwick family of Silverhill, who are wealthy because of gold mines, the Lannister family of Lanny Sport, who are wealthy because of port trade, and the Lannister family of Casterly Rock, who are wealthy because of gold mines and taxes. Jane has no hope of marrying into the Lannister family of Casterly Rock in this life, and the Earl of Lannister of Lanny Sport only has 1 daughter and no sons. Then in the Westerlands, there are only 2 families left to choose from, the Leford family of the Golden Tooth and the Sarwick family of Silverhill. The Sarwick family of Silverhill once rejected her father's marriage proposal, but today, as Duke Tywin's daughter, she has received marriage proposals from many noble youths, including Adam Sarwick, the future head of the Sarwick family. Adam Sarwick is handsome, wealthy, has a strong family background, and is highly skilled in martial arts. He is Jane's ideal young noble. Looking at the Westerlands, it is impossible to find a young man with better conditions than Sarwick. If Jane marries Adam, she will be the Countess of Silverhill in the future. Jane had high expectations for Adam Sarwick. Today, as the protagonist of the whole city, Jane also received admiring glances from almost all men and women. From 16-year-old teenagers to 60-year-old old nobles, their eyes were full of praise and desire. Jane became noble by virtue of her father. The only regret was that her mother could not attend and witness her glory. Her mother was the daughter of a merchant, not a noble, and was looked down upon by Duke Tywin, so she had to compromise and stay alone in the crag. Jane thought about her daughter's little thoughts and secretly glanced at her beloved Adam again. It was very lively on Adam's side, with bursts of laughter constantly erupting. Because of the distance, Jane didn't know what Adam and Gregor were talking about. She saw many knights at nearby long tables carrying wine glasses and gathering around Adam and Gregor. They were laughing and talking about something, the atmosphere was lively, and bursts of laughter kept coming. I bet 10 gold dragons. I bet 50. She faintly heard the knights and lords shouting loudly.